The echo of Marina's whispered words sent a chill down my spine. I stood frozen, clutching the laundry basket, as her hushed conversation wafted through the open door of the guest house. Something about the tone and urgency of her voice raised every red flag within me. "I know, but I need more time," she pleaded. Her voice strained. "Just a few more weeks, and I swear I'll have the money." My heart raced as I realized she was talking to a man who was not my son, Adrian. A familiar knot of unease twisted in my gut. Marina's erratic behavior and constant need for cash had become a source of concern, but this conversation hinted at something more sinister. Footsteps approached, and I quickly retreated, my mind whirling with unanswered questions. As Marina emerged, her expression was one of barely contained panic. She jumped when she noticed me, her eyes wide with what looked like guilt. "Delilah, I didn't see you there," she stammered, her hand clutching her phone tightly. "Everything okay, dear?" I asked, feigning innocence. "Yes, of course," she replied with a forced smile. "Just a call about work." Work? Marina hadn't held a job in years, not since Lila was born. The lie was transparent, and it only deepened my suspicions. Over dinner that evening, Adrian and Hank remained oblivious to the tension simmering between Marina and me. Lila, our sweet 7-year-old granddaughter, chattered away, blissfully unaware of the undercurrents rippling beneath the surface. As the meal progressed, I couldn't help but study Marina's behavior. The way she fidgeted, her eyes darting around the room, the forced smiles that never quite reached her eyes. It was as if she carried a heavy burden, one she was desperate to conceal. Later that night, after everyone had retired to their rooms, I found myself pacing the living room, unable to shake the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. Marina's cryptic conversation replayed in my mind, each word amplifying the disquiet that had taken root. Hank emerged from our bedroom, his brow furrowed with concern. "What's going on, Delilah? You've been on edge all evening." I hesitated, unsure of how to voice my suspicions without sounding paranoid. But Hank's patient gaze encouraged me to open up. "It's Marina," I confessed, wringing my hands. "I overheard her on the phone earlier, and it sounded like she's in some kind of trouble, financial trouble, perhaps. She was pleading with someone for more time, promising to pay them back." Hank's expression grew grave as he absorbed my words. "Are you certain?" I nodded, recounting the details of the conversation I'd overheard. As the words tumbled out, I could see the weight of my concerns settling upon Hank's shoulders. "We need to tread carefully," he said, his voice heavy with caution. "Accusations without proof could do irreparable damage to this family." His words struck a chord, and I knew he was right, but the seed of doubt had been planted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Marina was hiding something that threatened the very fabric of our family's well-being. As I lay awake that night, my mind raced with possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. One thing was certain: I would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. The truth had to be uncovered, even if it meant shattering the fragile peace we had so carefully cultivated. In the days that followed, a palpable tension lingered in our home. I found myself constantly on edge, scrutinizing Marina's every move, searching for any clues that might shed light on her mysterious behavior. The truth was, I distrusted her, a realization that filled me with guilt, but one I couldn't ignore. It started with small things: a missing piece of jewelry, a few dollars gone from my purse. Insignificant incidents, perhaps, but they felt like threads in a larger tapestry of deceit. Marina's excuses rang hollow, her explanations riddled with holes that only deepened my suspicions. "I must have misplaced it," she'd say, waving away my concerns with a casual shrug. But the glint in her eyes betrayed her nonchalance, hinting at something more sinister lurking beneath the surface. Then came the larger transgressions, the ones that couldn't be easily dismissed. Unexplained withdrawals from our joint bank account, purchases of expensive clothing and accessories that seemed far beyond her means. Marina's once frugal ways had given way to a newfound taste for luxury, and I couldn't help but wonder where the money was coming from. "It's just a little treat for myself," she'd insist, flashing a dazzling smile that did little to mask the calculating gleam in her eyes. Hank tried to reason with me, urging caution and patience. "We can't make accusations without proof," he'd remind me, his voice laced with concern. But I couldn't shake the gnawing sense that something was terribly wrong, and Marina was at the center of it all. It was during one of our hushed conversations that a plan began to take shape. A way to catch Marina in the act, to unravel the web of deception she'd so carefully woven. With Hank's reluctant approval, I began marking the bills in our cash box, a silent trap waiting to be sprung. The days ticked by, each one more tense than the last. Marina's behavior grew increasingly erratic, her absences more frequent and her excuses more flimsy. It was as if she knew the walls were closing in, and she was scrambling to maintain her facade of normalcy. Then, one fateful afternoon, I caught her red-handed. I'd returned home unexpectedly, only to find Marina rifling through my dresser drawers. Her eyes went wide with panic when she saw me, and she instinctively tried to hide the bundle of marked bills clutched in her trembling hand. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Marina's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing into slits of defiance. "You have no right to accuse me," she spat, her words laced with venom. "You're just a paranoid old woman, grasping at shadows." Her words stung, but I refused to back down. "Those are my bills, Marina, the ones I marked specifically to catch you in the act." For a moment, she faltered, her mask of indignation slipping. But then, just as quickly, it snapped back into place, and she unleashed a torrent of denials and accusations, painting me as the villain in her twisted narrative. Hank rushed in, alerted by the commotion, and tried to play peacemaker. But Marina would have none of it, storming out and leaving a trail of chaos in her wake. As I watched her retreating figure, a sense of grim determination settled over me. The game was up, the truth laid bare. Marina's betrayal had been exposed, and now the real battle was just beginning. The air was thick with tension as we all gathered in the living room. Marina sat rigidly on the couch, her arms crossed defensively, while Adrian paced back and forth, his expression etched with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "This is absurd," Marina spat, her eyes flashing with defiance. "How dare you accuse me of stealing?" I steeled myself, clutching the bundle of marked bills like a lifeline. "These are the same bills I marked, Marina. I found them in your possession, hidden in my dresser drawer." Adrian's head whipped around, his gaze shifting between us like a pendulum. "What's going on?" "Someone needs to explain this to me right now." Hank placed a steadying hand on my shoulder, his silent support bolstering my resolve. "We caught Marina stealing from us, son. She's been taking money, jewelry, anything she could get her hands on." Marina recoiled as if she'd been slapped, her expression contorting into one of outrage. "How dare you? You're both delusional, grasping at straws to suit your twisted little narrative." "We have proof, Marina," I said, my voice firm. "These marked bills are all the evidence we need." "That proves nothing," she snapped, her eyes blazing with fury. "You're just looking for an excuse to turn Adrian against me." Adrian flinched, his face pale with shock. "Marina, please, tell me this isn't true." For a moment Marina faltered, her mask of defiance slipping ever so slightly. But then, just as quickly, she rallied, turning her venomous gaze on her husband. "Of course it's not true, darling," she cooed, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "Your mother has become unhinged in her old age. She's seeing things that aren't there, twisting innocent actions into some grand conspiracy." My heart sank as Adrian's eyes clouded with doubt. Marina had played her trump card, exploiting the unbreakable bond between mother and son. "Mom, I don't know what to believe," Adrian stammered, his eyes pleading with me to retract my accusations. Before I could respond, Marina pounced, her words slicing through the air like daggers. "Your mother has always resented me, Adrian. She's never accepted me into this family, and now she's trying to drive a wedge between us." Tears of frustration stung my eyes as I watched Marina's manipulation take hold. She was a master of deception, weaving her lies with surgical precision, playing on Adrian's love and loyalty like a virtuoso. "That's not true," I protested, my voice cracking with emotion. "I'm only trying to protect this family from her deceit." Adrian shook his head, his expression clouded with a mixture of hurt and confusion. "I can't. I don't know what to believe anymore." Marina seized the opportunity, wrapping her arms around him in a gesture of false comfort. "It's okay, my love. We'll get through this, just like we always do." As I watched them embrace, the bitter taste of defeat filled my mouth. Marina had won this round, her lies and manipulations carrying the day. But deep within me, an ember of determination still burned, fueled by the knowledge that the truth was on my side. This was far from over. In the aftermath of Marina's blatant lies and Adrian's misguided loyalty, a palpable rift had formed within our family. The once warm and inviting atmosphere had given way to a chilling tension, each of us trapped in our own emotional turmoil. Marina strutted around the house with a smug air of victory, her every action a silent taunt, a reminder of the wedge she'd driven between us. Her deceit had taken root, casting doubt and suspicion like a noxious cloud that threatened to consume us all. Hank, bless his heart, tried his best to remain the voice of reason. "We need concrete evidence," he'd say, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and determination, something that can't be twisted or denied. His words struck a chord within me, reigniting the flames of my resolve. If Marina wanted a war, then a war she would have. I would not rest until the truth was laid bare, no matter the cost. With Hank's reluctant approval, I took the first step in my quest for vindication, installing hidden cameras throughout the house. It felt like a violation of trust, but Marina's betrayal had left me with little choice. Day after day, I pored over the footage, documenting every suspicious movement, every whispered conversation, every unexplained absence. Each new piece of evidence was like a puzzle piece, slowly revealing the bigger picture of Marina's deceit. I became a prisoner in my own home, haunted by the ghosts of Marina's lies. Sleep evaded me, my nights consumed by the flickering images on the monitor, searching for that one damning moment that would unravel her carefully constructed web of deception. Marina, oblivious to my covert surveillance, grew bolder in her actions. Her spending spiraled out of control, designer handbags and expensive jewelry adorning her like trophies of her conquest. And all the while she played the part of the doting wife and mother, her lies growing more elaborate with each passing day. It was during one of these sleepless nights that I found an unlikely ally in my quest for the truth. An old friend from my nursing days, a former police officer named Cynthia, had reached out after sensing my distress. Over cups of strong coffee and whispered confidences, I poured out the sordid details of Marina's betrayal, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and despair. Cynthia listened intently, her eyes filled with a combination of sympathy and steely determination. "You need to document everything," she urged, her voice firm but laced with compassion. "Every lie, every unexplained expense, every suspicious action. Build an airtight case that even Adrian can't ignore." Her words ignited a newfound sense of purpose within me. I would become a one-woman investigation team, leaving no stone unturned in my quest to expose Marina's duplicity. With Cynthia's guidance, I began meticulous documentation, cross-referencing bank statements, receipts, and eyewitness accounts. Each piece of evidence was a brick in the fortress I was building, a bastion of truth that would withstand even Marina's most vicious assaults. As the days turned into weeks, the strain of my double life began to take its toll. Marina's barbed comments and dismissive glances cut deeper with each passing day, reminding me of the precarious position I found myself in. But through it all, Cynthia remained my unwavering rock, a beacon of support in the storm of Marina's lies. Her friendship became a lifeline, sustaining me through the darkest moments when doubt threatened to consume me. Little did Marina know, the walls were closing in. The truth was a relentless hunter, and I was its unyielding pursuer. Her reign of deception was nearing its end, and soon she would face the consequences of her actions. The stage was set for the ultimate confrontation, a reckoning that would shake the very foundations of our family, and this time there would be no escape from the harsh light of truth. As the days ticked by, the strain of my covert investigation began to take its toll. Sleep became a fleeting luxury, replaced by endless hours spent hunched over the monitor, scouring the footage for any shred of evidence that could unravel Marina's web of lies. Cynthia became my lifeline, her steadfast support and unwavering belief in my cause the only thing keeping me afloat. Our meetings grew more frequent, our conversations a safe haven where I could voice my fears and frustrations without judgment. "She's unraveling, Cynthia," I confided one evening, my voice laced with exhaustion. "The more evidence I gather, the more reckless she becomes." Cynthia nodded grimly, her eyes reflecting a grim understanding. Cornered animals are often the most dangerous. Marina knows the walls are closing in, and she's lashing out in desperation. Her words rang true. Marina's behavior had become increasingly erratic, her lies more brazen, and her actions more reckless. It was as if she believed she had already won, that her manipulation of Adrian had granted her immunity from consequence. "She's spending like there's no tomorrow," I lamented, rifling through a stack of bank statements. "Expensive jewelry, designer clothes, lavish outings. It's like she's flaunting her ill-gotten gains right in front of us." Cynthia's brow furrowed as she studied the documentation I had meticulously compiled. "She's overconfident, sloppy. That's good for us. It means she's making mistakes." I nodded, my jaw clenched with determination, "and I'll be there to catch every single one of them." With each passing day, the rift within our family grew wider, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Adrian remained steadfastly loyal to Marina, dismissing my concerns as unfounded paranoia fueled by resentment. "Mom, you need to let this go," he pleaded, his eyes filled with a mixture of exasperation and concern. "Marina loves us, and your constant accusations are tearing this family apart." His words cut deep, but I refused to back down. "I'm only trying to protect us, Adrian. Can't you see what she's doing?" Marina would swoop in during these moments, playing the role of the devoted wife to perfection. "Your mother is blinded by her irrational hatred for me," she cooed, her eyes brimming with false tears. "She's become consumed by this vendetta, and it's poisoning her mind." Adrian would pull her close, casting reproachful glances in my direction as he comforted his wife, the woman I knew to be a master manipulator. These scenes played out with increasing frequency, each one chipping away at my resolve. But Cynthia's unwavering support kept me grounded, her friendship a lifeline in the storm of Marina's deceit. "Don't let her get to you," Cynthia urged, her voice firm but laced with compassion. "She's playing mind games, trying to break your spirit. But you're stronger than that, Delilah. You have the truth on your side." Her words reignited the flame of determination within me. I would not be deterred, not by Marina's lies or her emotional manipulation. The truth was my shield, and I would wield it like a sword, cutting through the tangled web of deception that had ensnared my family. As the evidence mounted, so too did the weight of the burden I carried. Sleep became elusive, replaced by fitful slumbers haunted by Marina's betrayal. But I refused to falter, driven by a singular purpose, to expose the truth and restore the sanctity of our family. Little did Marina know, her reign of deception was nearing its end. The final confrontation loomed on the horizon, a reckoning that would shake the foundations of our lives, and this time there would be no escape from the harsh light of truth. The air was thick with tension as we gathered around the dining table for our weekly family dinner. Marina, ever the master of deception, wore a mask of serene domesticity, busying herself with serving platters and making small talk as if nothing were amiss. Adrian, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface, chatted amiably about his work, his eyes filled with a love and devotion that made my heart ache. How could he not see the monster he had welcomed into our home, into our lives? Hank shot me a sidelong glance, his expression a silent plea for restraint. But the time for patience had passed. The evidence I had painstakingly gathered was irrefutable, and I could no longer stand idly by as Marina's lies poisoned our family. As Marina placed the final dish on the table, I cleared my throat, the sound cutting through the forced conviviality like a knife. "Before we begin, there's something we need to address." Marina's head snapped up, her eyes narrowing as she sensed the shift in the atmosphere. "What is it, Delilah?" I leveled my gaze at her, steeling myself for the battle to come. "I know what you've been doing, Marina. The stealing, the lies, the secret meetings. I have proof of all of it." A hush fell over the table as Adrian and Hank exchanged bewildered glances. Marina, for her part, maintained her facade of innocence, a sickly sweet smile curling her lips. "I don't know what you're talking about," she demurred, her voice dripping with false sincerity. "These accusations are baseless and hurtful." "Enough with the lies," I snapped, my patience finally fraying. "I have footage of you rifling through our belongings, taking money and valuables. I have documentation of your secret rendezvous and unexplained expenditures." Marina's mask slipped, her expression contorting into one of barely contained fury. "You've been spying on me?" In my own home? Our home, corrected, my voice firm. The home you've been systematically robbing and betraying with your deceit. Adrian's eyes widened, his gaze flickering between us as the reality of the situation began to sink in. Marina, is this true? Marina turned towards him, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. Of course not, my love. Your mother has become unhinged, consumed by her irrational hatred for me. Don't listen to her lies, Adrian, I pleaded, my voice thick with emotion. I have proof, irrefutable evidence of her betrayal. With trembling hands, I produced the damning footage, the grainy images flickering to life on the small screen. Marina's face drained of color as she watched herself slinking through the house, pocketing valuables and sneaking out at odd hours. Adrian recoiled as if he'd been struck, his eyes boring into the incriminating evidence with a mixture of horror and disbelief. Marina, how could you? Marina's composure cracked, her mask of innocence shattering like fragile glass. You stupid, meddling old woman, she spat, her words laced with venom. You've ruined everything. In that moment, the veneer of civility fell away, revealing the true depths of Marina's depravity. She launched into a tirade of accusations and denials, her voice rising to a fever pitch as she lashed out like a cornered animal. Adrian simply sat there, stunned into silence, his world crumbling around him. Hank tried to intervene, his voice a calming balm in the midst of the storm. Marina, please, let's all take a deep breath and— No, she snarled, her eyes wild with fury. I'm done playing by your rules, done with all of your lies and manipulations. With a violent sweep of her arm, she sent the dishes crashing to the floor, shattering porcelain and scattering food in a chaotic mess. Lila, our sweet granddaughter, let out a terrified wail, her eyes wide with fear. In that moment, something shifted within Marina. Her expression hardened, her lips curling into a sneer of pure contempt. You want the truth, Delilah? Fine. The truth is, I've been bleeding this family dry for months, and none of you were smart enough to catch on. The words hung in the air like a noxious cloud, their impact rendering us all speechless. Marina had finally shown her true colors, and the sight was as horrifying as it was vindicating. As she stormed out, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, the truth had prevailed. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, I had hoped that our family could heal, that we could rebuild from the ashes of Marina's betrayal and emerge stronger, united by the bonds of love and loyalty. The war was won, but the scars would linger. And as I held Lila close, shielding her from the fallout, I silently vowed that no matter what lay ahead, I would protect my family with every fiber of my being. The truth had set us free, but at what cost? The silence that followed Marina's explosive outburst was deafening, a palpable weight that seemed to press down upon us all. Adrian sat motionless, his face ashen, his eyes fixed on the space where his wife had stood moments earlier, hurling her venomous words like daggers. Hank was the first to break the spell, his voice low and measured. Son, I'm so sorry. We tried to warn you, but— Adrian held up a trembling hand, silencing his father. Don't. Just don't. I watched helplessly as my son's world crumbled around him, the foundations of his life stripped bare by the harsh light of truth. Marina's betrayal had cut him to the core, and I ached to offer him comfort, to soothe the wounds inflicted by the woman he had loved and trusted. But before I could speak, the door creaked open, and Marina slunk back into the room, her eyes red-rimmed and her shoulders slumped in defeat. The fight had gone out of her, replaced by a weary resignation that hung like a shroud around her slight frame. Adrian, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. I owe you an explanation. Adrian stiffened, his jaw clenched, but he remained silent, granting her the opportunity to speak. Marina took a shuddering breath, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. It started innocently enough, a few dollars here and there, just to feed my habit. My brow furrowed as the pieces began to fall into place. Habit? What are you talking about? Marina's gaze flickered to me, her eyes haunted. Gambling. I have a problem, one that spiraled out of control. A collective gasp rippled through the room as the truth finally came to light. Marina, the woman we had welcomed into our family, the mother of our precious granddaughter, was a gambling addict, and she had been systematically bleeding us dry to fuel her addiction. How could you? Adrian's voice was a hoarse whisper, laced with heartbreak and disbelief. "How could you betray us like this?" Marina flinched as if struck, her eyes brimming with remorseful tears. "It started small, just a few dollars here and there to scratch the itch. But then the losses mounted, and I found myself digging a deeper and deeper hole, desperate to chase that high, to win it all back." Her words hung in the air, their weight suffocating. I thought back to all the signs, the unexplained expenditures, the missing valuables, all the breadcrumbs leading to this sordid truth. "And Lila?" Hank's voice was tight, his expression inscrutable. "Did you involve our granddaughter in your schemes?" Marina's head bowed in shame, her shoulders trembling with silent sobs. I did. I manipulated her, promised her lavish gifts if she helped me take a few things here and there." A collective gasp of horror echoed through the room, and I felt my heart constrict with a pain so acute it stole my breath away. Marina had not only betrayed our trust, but had also corrupted the innocence of our sweet Lila, using her as a pawn in her twisted game. Adrian shot to his feet, his face contorted with rage. "Get out!" he growled, his voice thick with barely contained fury. "Get out of my house and never come back." Marina opened her mouth as if to protest, but one look at Adrian's thunderous expression seemed to quell any further objections. With a defeated nod, she rose to her feet and made her way towards the door, each step heavy with the weight of her sins. As she reached the threshold, she turned back, her eyes pleading. "Adrian, please, let me see Lila. I'll get help, I promise. Just don't take her away from me." But Adrian's resolve was unshakable, his love for his wife eclipsed by the depths of her betrayal. "You lost that right the moment you involved our daughter in your schemes. I'll be filing for full custody first thing in the morning." Marina's face crumpled, but she offered no further resistance. With a broken sob, she turned and disappeared into the night, leaving a trail of shattered lives in her wake. As the door closed behind her, a heavy silence descended upon the room, punctuated only by the muffled sound of Lila's whimpers from the next room. In that moment, the weight of Marina's deceit crashed down upon us all, a tsunami of grief and anger that threatened to consume us whole. But even as the tides of emotion surged, I felt a glimmer of hope flicker to life within me. The truth, no matter how painful, had been laid bare, and from these ashes we would rebuild, one step at a time, one day at a time, until the wounds had healed and the scars had faded. It would be a long and arduous journey, but we would walk it together, as a family united by our love and our resilience. Marina's betrayal would not define us, it would be the catalyst for our rebirth, a crucible from which we would emerge stronger, wiser, and more tightly bound than ever before. As I reached out to gather Adrian and Lila into my embrace, I silently vowed that no matter what lay ahead, we would face it together, fortified by the unbreakable bonds of family and the healing power of truth. The days that followed Marina's explosive confession were a blur of legal proceedings and emotional turmoil. Adrian, steadfast in his resolve, wasted no time in filing for divorce and seeking full custody of Lila. "She doesn't get to slither back into our lives after what she's done," he declared, his voice laced with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. "Not until she's paid her debt to society and proven herself worthy of being a part of Lila's life again." As much as it pained me to see my son suffering, I couldn't help but swell with pride at the unwavering strength he displayed in the face of such devastating betrayal. Marina's deceit had cut him to the core, but instead of crumbling, he had risen like a phoenix from the ashes, driven by an unshakable determination to protect his daughter. The legal process was arduous, fraught with contentious hearings and bitter confrontations. Marina, perhaps sensing the gravity of her transgressions, offered little resistance, her once defiant spirit broken by the weight of her lies. In the end, justice prevailed. Marina was ordered to not only repay the staggering sum of money she had stolen from our family, but also to undergo a court-mandated rehabilitation program to address her gambling addiction. As for Lila, the judge granted Adrian full custody, with Marina receiving strictly supervised visitation rights, a harsh but necessary measure to ensure our granddaughter's well-being in the aftermath of her mother's deplorable actions. "She'll have the chance to rebuild her relationship with Lila," Adrian told me, his eyes shining with a mixture of resolution and cautious hope. "But only if she proves herself worthy of that privilege." Marina's sentencing was a bittersweet moment, a culmination of months of anguish and turmoil. As she stood before the judge, her shoulders slumped in defeat, I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity amid the overwhelming sense of vindication. This woman, who had once been welcomed into our family with open arms, had fallen so far, consumed by the demons of her own making. Her descent into depravity had not only cost her our trust, but had also robbed her of the love and respect of her own daughter. As the gavel fell, sealing her fate, I saw a flicker of remorse in Marina's eyes. A fleeting glimpse of the person she might have been, untainted by the insidious grip of addiction. In that moment, I realized that true revenge lay not in her suffering but in our perseverance, our unwavering commitment to healing the wounds she had inflicted upon our family. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but we were ready to face it head-on, bolstered by the unbreakable bonds that had been forged in the crucible of Marina's betrayal. Hank and I became a constant presence in Adrian and Lila's lives, offering unwavering support and stability in the wake of their upheaval. Slowly but surely, we began to piece together the fragments of our fractured family, building anew on the foundations of love, trust, and resilience. Lila, bless her heart, proved to be our greatest source of strength and hope. Her innocent spirit, untainted by the darkness of her mother's actions, was a beacon that guided us through the darkest of times. "Why did Mommy do those bad things?" she would ask, her eyes wide and imploring. And in those moments, we would gather her close, assuring her that while her mother had made grave mistakes, she still loved her. A love that would have to be earned anew through painstaking effort and unwavering commitment. As the months passed, the wounds began to heal, though the scars would forever serve as a reminder of the price we had paid for the truth. Marina, to her credit, seemed to embrace her court-mandated rehabilitation, her visits with Lila becoming less strained and more genuine with each passing week. It was during one such visit, as I watched Marina and Layla engage in a tentative yet tender exchange, that I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The anger and resentment that had once consumed me had given way to a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the resilience of my family, for the strength we had found in adversity, and for the unbreakable bonds that had carried us through the storm. As Marina bid farewell to Lila, her eyes shone with a newfound clarity, a glimmer of the woman she had once been, untainted by the darkness that had nearly consumed her. In that moment, I realized that true victory lay not in her suffering, but in our ability to rise above it, to emerge from the ashes of her betrayal stronger, wiser, and more tightly bound than ever before. The road ahead would undoubtedly be paved with challenges, but we were ready to face them head-on, fortified by the unwavering love and support that had seen us through our darkest hours. As I watched Adrian and Lila laugh and play in the warm embrace of our family, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. The truth had set us free, but it had also revealed the depths of our resilience and the unbreakable bonds that truly defined us. We were survivors, warriors forged in the fires of adversity, and nothing, not even the cruelest of betrayals, could ever dim the light that burned within our hearts.
My name is Ivy, and the moment I learned about my cancer diagnosis, both my mother-in-law and husband turned their backs on me. Our marriage, which was supposed to endure sickness and health, crumbled when my husband, Isaac, realized that my time might be limited. He chose to run away and ghost me. Fortunately, I found solace in the unexpected support of my father-in-law, Theodore, who turned out to be the father-in-law of the century. At 31 years old, facing the devastation of cancer after a couple of challenging months was unexpected. However, what truly baffled me was the audacity of my mother-in-law, Georgia. Despite the vows of marriage, she compelled Isaac to abandon me, claiming there was no hope left. Such heartlessness is beyond comprehension. Georgia's monstrous side, rooted in an inflated sense of self-importance, always fueled her judgmental remarks. While economic differences between our families were not substantial, her family's additional wealth of around 500 created a sense of superiority. Beyond finances, our relationship faced the common misunderstandings found in any marriage. However, with my mother-in-law, These clashes escalated to toxic levels. She consistently mistreated me based on her misinterpretations, making it a painful experience, with Isaac occasionally attempting to mediate. The turning point came 7 weeks ago when I received the gut-wrenching cancer diagnosis. Initially, we tried to come to terms with it, but my mother-in-law's behavior became increasingly erratic and toxic. Her influence over Isaac grew, and her misinterpretations led to painful situations. A few days after sharing my diagnosis, she callously suggested Isaac move to the bedroom TV since I would soon be confined to bed, adding insult to injury. When I implored Isaac to address his mother's insensitivity, he initially complied, only to later join in her heartless laughter. He dismissed my feelings, asking me to chill out and take a joke. As they continued their classless jokes and mockery, even in the absence of Theodore, my father-in-law, I felt isolated and defenseless. Theodore, often away from home, preferred the company of friends, leaving me vulnerable to the mother-son duo's heartless antics. I endured their absurdities while grappling with my health struggles, a situation that would be almost comical if it weren't painfully real. Fortunately, we didn't have children, and as time passed, it became evident that Isaac was far from an ideal partner for parenthood. While not entirely monstrous, they occasionally lent a hand, often accompanied by backhanded comments and negativity. Drained and worn down, I couldn't summon the energy to wage wars or respond to hurtful words in my already burdened heart. The worst was yet to come, and it arrived on a day when Isaac was absent due to work commitments. As my health deteriorated, with regular bouts of sickness and loss of control over my senses, Theodore out of the house, it fell upon Georgia to handle the mess. While there were no jokes that day, her silent treatment spoke volumes, dispelling any doubts about her feelings towards me. Hint, she did not like me. It was evident she was growing tired of me, and the scariest part was that she didn't shy away from showing it. In desperation, I suggested hiring a nurse to lighten the load. You'd think it was a reasonable solution, but according to Georgia, Theodore had refused to even consider it in a conversation I was convinced she had never had with him in my presence. I couldn't help but believe that if he knew of my suffering, he wouldn't deny me help. However, according to Georgia, they were already taking care of me, and the nurse would be a waste of money. This wasn't an isolated incident. It happened multiple times. Despite living comfortably with her husband's money, when I needed genuine help, there was silence. To add insult to injury, she started encouraging Isaac to meet new people, by which she meant women, different women. Initially, I thought she wanted him to connect with those dealing with sick relatives like me, but I was wrong. Her ulterior motive was clear. She wanted him to get in touch with women to easily replace me. At first, Isaac played the role of the faithful husband, but slowly his behavior changed. Late nights out transformed into late-night phone conversations, audible as I drifted in and out of sleep. The gravity of the situation became painfully clear 2 weeks ago, in the middle of my afternoon nap. When I heard the front door open and then shut, followed by the murmur of multiple voices, mostly female, filling the living room, I knew Georgia was in the house. Isaac was at the office. It was just 9 days ago that one of these women returned, making it evident that her visit wasn't for me. She came to see Isaac. They stayed in the living room, seemingly acting decently, but my intuition sensed something was off. My suspicions were confirmed when Georgia left me alone, sneaking out of the house, assuming I was already asleep. I couldn't decipher what happened between them in that single hour, but I knew they were making plans that didn't include me. The peculiar thing was that this woman never visited me. She was always there for Isaac. 5 days ago, Georgia approached me, announcing that she had arranged for a nurse to take over my duties. I couldn't help but question her abrupt change of heart. Her response was absurd and infuriating. They were leaving me. When I pressed for an explanation, she casually answered that they needed space to accept that I would soon die. I was left dumbfounded. It made no sense. That wasn't a reasonable reaction to my situation. According to her logic, she had found a new woman for Isaac, someone perfectly healthy, as if my illness was repulsive. According to her, Isaac needed space to move on. How heartless could one person be? It was beyond comprehension, beyond any semblance of human decency. Their grand idea was to leave me on my own while they enjoyed their newfound freedom, not burdened by the responsibilities of caring for a sick person. Georgia had found a replacement for me, a potential wife for Isaac, who would conveniently step into my shoes the moment I passed away. The audacity of it all was staggering. She expected me to accept this fate because I was battling cancer, as if my diagnosis granted them the right to abandon me. I attempted to talk to Isaac about the situation, but he conveniently avoided me as much as possible. In the brief moments we spoke, he reassured me not to worry too much, and before I knew it, they were gone. Amidst these sudden developments, another strange occurrence took place. My father-in-law, who had always kept his distance, started calling and messaging me. The nurse stepped up, tending to my every need, from cooking to cleaning. Everything that Georgia and Isaac had promised but failed to deliver. Georgia initially paid for her, but eventually, the entire responsibility fell on my shoulders, and I started using whatever savings I had left to compensate her. Theodore, who had maintained his silence during the entire fiasco, now bombarded my phone with calls and messages. In sickness and in health, Isaac had promised, yet this was his response. He proved to be nothing short of trash. Now, I'm utterly curious about what my father-in-law wants. Surely he was not calling without reason. I'll update you with the top comments from the original post. Comment number 1. Look, I don't entirely want to side with your family, but it does kind of make sense why they took such big steps to preserve their own feelings. Losing somebody hurts, and I've lost several of my loved ones, and I still hate knowing them. Well, it would have saved me so much pain if I hadn't known them. Everybody has the right to defend themselves against that kind of pain. Your family was a little too extreme, though, and I'm really sorry for you. Cancer sounds bad enough. Maybe try contacting your own family. Where are they anyway? Comment number 2. It's a shame doing this isn't criminal, but the way your husband has behaved is disgusting. Forget your mother-in-law. Your husband is the biggest trash here. I wonder what your father-in-law wants, but maybe you should talk to him once as well. Maybe he wants to say something important. Update number 1. My father-in-law. And I had a conversation. And now we find ourselves living in the same neighborhood. He spent a fortune to rent the nearest home to where I currently live, away from his wife and son. Yeah, it might sound surprising, but after years of silence, he finally found the courage to speak up. 7 days ago, he reached out to me again, and I decided it was time to confront the truth. I realized that clarifying things with him once and for all would help the situation. I decided that if my family wanted to cut ties with me, I would not back down either. Dying alone would be much better than crying over crappy people like Georgia and Isaac. In the past 2 weeks, my health has continued to go down. I find myself bleeding profusely, and even the thought of food disgusted me. When he called, I mustered the strength to answer, ready to hear whatever he wanted to talk about. The moment I picked up the phone, he immediately apologized for staying silent for so long and did not shy away from accepting whatever his wife and son did to me as wrong. He confessed that he was not paying attention to what was going on at home, and then told me how shocked he was with their decision to abandon me. He found their actions utterly classless, crass, and intolerable, and no longer wanted to stay with them. That's why he reached out to me. Well, since I held no grudge against him and was in a desperate situation, I accepted him back into my life. At that point, I was far too tired to care much about the details, and so for the past 7 days, we've been living as neighbors. He comes over to check up on me 3 times a day and has also decided to take the responsibility of paying for my nurse with her weekly payments. But that's not really what is developing in these past weeks. There are a couple more things that happened. Allow me to explain. When the news of my father-in-law staying with me reached my mother-in-law and husband, they acted very swiftly. They reached out to him first, leaving voicemails, sending messages, They kept apologizing to him and then asked if he was upset with them. My father-in-law showed me every single message. It was comical to me because it was obvious why they were so desperate. They were heavily dependent on him and could not afford anything. My father-in-law getting upset at them. Well, it's not helping. But he remained silent, ignoring every call and message. Days turned into a week, and their desperation started to grow. Suddenly, they started bombarding me with phone calls and messages. At this time, neither the calls nor the messages stopped. Initially, their messages had been about little things, but now it was about them at my father-in-law's suggestion. I made a decision not to answer their calls or messages. Their newfound concern felt fake, and it was evident they did not care for me but for themselves. Who wants to play that game? I was sick, but I was not a doormat. Their desperation reached an absolute peak when they showed up at my door with a bag of fruits and lots of words of sympathy. Before my nurse or I could update them about my health, they started probing about my father-in-law's whereabouts. Since he was neither at my house nor theirs, I replied just as he had instructed me to in such a situation. I explained that his office was nearby, and staying here saved him extra cash he would be required to spend from the new place they stay at. They were not content with my response. Financially, they had always been well off, and my explanation likely did not fulfill their assumptions. Regardless, they accepted it at face value, seemingly uncaring whether it was true. They again asked me about my health, stayed some 5 more minutes at my home, and then told me that they needed to be somewhere important. But I did not care. I wanted them to leave already. She said they would leave in a while, and I was not sure what they wanted. But I hoped that they would have the sensibility to address what they had done to me. At the very least, I expected her to offer me an explanation for their actions. I assumed I could ask for that much, but sensibility was clearly beyond their grasp. Instead of doing any of that, my mother-in-law dropped the bomb while Isaac was in the kitchen. She revealed that Isaac was getting interested in the women he was seeing. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Even though I had sensed their intentions, I was not shocked that they had made these kinds of plans, as it was clear from the beginning. But that they were dead serious about going through with it was another matter. This was no elaborate joke. I was still alive. It had only been a little over a month since my diagnosis, and they were already going to such lengths to distance themselves. As one of my comments pointed out, is this how you defend yourself against the potential of getting hurt by isolating the person in need? The audacity of that woman knew no boundaries. And if that was not enough, she claimed that she had planned a few dates for Isaac and the other women. My nurse, bless her, tried to put an end to this cruel conversation, informing my mother-in-law that I needed rest. Then she mentioned her hopes that I might attend, quote, at least his engagement party. Yeah, the audacity rises. But she did not stop there. Oh no, she promised to send me the divorce papers on Isaac's behalf, indifferent to any response I might have. According to her, it was better to handle the paperwork before I lost my senses, as if I were on the brink of insanity. Yeah, her logic. It would save Isaac potential heartache, and the divorce would allow him to get over me quickly with this new woman by his side. My nurse, her eyes fixed on me, probably wondered how I was managing to endure such insanity. Yesterday, true to her promise, she sent the divorce papers, and Isaac had already signed them, along with a confirmation from his side indicating that he did not care about me at all. Although deeply hurt, I cannot say I was entirely surprised. I always knew what they were like. Instead of reacting impulsively, as I desperately wanted to, I waited. I waited to share this news with my father-in-law. When I told him about the divorce papers, he looked not just disgusted and disturbed but also betrayed. After spending countless years with his son and wife, he must have held out some hope for decency and compassion. Yet, he made a promise. He vowed to take his weekend off the next week, setting aside time for us to confront this legal nightmare together. I was not sure about his intentions, but facing a more stable person while I was dealing with my illness seemed like a better option than dealing with it on my own. Update number 2. He came over to my place and then told me that he had been thinking over some things for some time now. When I questioned him about what he meant, he introduced me to his lawyer dealing with our case. He informed me that his first words to the lawyer were that he had given enough time for his wife and son to come around, but since he saw no improvement in their behavior, he was going with the plan. And I knew what he was planning. On that particular weekend, he came to my home with his lawyer. I was excited about whatever he had in store. We began discussing the divorce situation, and then he dropped the news on me, the thing he said he had been contemplating for a while. He wanted to make changes to his will. Even with his lawyer attempting to discuss the matter seriously, he kept insisting that he had thought enough on the topic and did not want to think about it anymore. It took an entire day of intense discussions, but by the day's end, I found myself the sole heir to every possession that he owned. He had cut them out entirely, leaving them with nothing more than a small plot in a barren countryside, a worthless piece of land that had nothing around for miles and miles. I knew my father-in-law had just made their lives harder, and I thought that was the end of it. But then he surprised me again. He summoned another pair of lawyers, and they were discussing divorce. Yes, you read that right. It was no longer solely about me. My father-in-law was on the brink of making the most important decision of his life. He planned not only to strip his wife of everything, but also to divorce her overnight. He looked at me and asked if I was all right with divorcing Isaac. After everything Isaac put me through, I did not need to think twice about it. I responded firmly, stating that after all this betrayal, I would be a fool to stay with him. And just like that, it was settled. I was going to divorce Isaac, and my father-in-law was going to divorce his wife, Georgia, and there's no turning back. The lawyer suggested we wait at least a month before filing for divorce, so that it would not look too hurried and planned to the court. We just agreed to wait. While all this was going on in our homes, my mother-in-law kept badgering me to sign the divorce papers. Isaac's silence was less annoying than whatever she was doing. It was like she wanted to get rid of me. I hoped that in the days to come, she would have to deal with wilder consequences than Isaac. I tried to tell her off, giving my chemotherapy treatment as an excuse, hoping that she would stop. To some extent, it worked. She lowered the frequency of calling me, but her demands never ended. She even dared to send me a picture of the women she intended for Isaac, adding insults to the injury with her questioning, "Isn't she pretty for Isaac?" Care to explain to me if you would have dealt with something like that? However, all of her crafty behavior only made my father-in-law more determined. He never forgot to apologize for his wife's behavior, and in a mere 5 days, this month will end, and both my mother-in-law and Isaac will receive the consequences of their actions. My mother-in-law will get a legal notice, and Isaac will receive those signed divorce papers he wants. If all goes according to plan, this would be the end of our interactions on all levels. Update number 3. The divorce bombshell shook George's world. Much to my amusement, she had been prepared for many things, but not for this. Upon receiving the legal notice, she dropped a storm of calls on my father-in-law's phone. When he refused to answer, she stormed over to both our places, demanding an explanation. My father-in-law was at my place for his routine checkup, and he had no choice but to tell her the blunt truth in my presence. He was tired of her and had contemplated this step for a long time. It was clear why he preferred the company of his friends over staying at home with his wife. Immediately, she broke down almost on her knees. She pleaded with him not to leave, and it was at that moment that the reality had hit her. My father-in-law kicked her out of his life. Then Isaac barged in, and because his parents were divorcing, he was now worried about himself. He knew things were not going to end very well for him, and he promised me that he did not want a divorce. But his mother forced him to have it. I told him I didn't care. This entire mom-son drama went on for the whole day until they left in the evening, empty-handed and hopeless. The legal proceedings were progressing relatively smoothly, and just when it seemed like we were on the verge of closure, my father-in-law dropped the truth. He claimed to have nothing to his name. Despite this, the court still ordered him to pay a certain amount of money to Georgia each month. It was a financial loss for us, but my father-in-law was relieved to have finally cut her off from his life. Meanwhile, the issue with the will was yet to be out in the open, and the court admonished Isaac for abandoning me and told him to pay me alimony. We hoped that with everything settled, life would finally calm down, and I would be able to deal with my upcoming painful months in peace without any of their drama. However, our hopes were shattered when Georgia and Isaac unexpectedly showed up at my house for yet another meeting. During their unexpected visit, they came up with an idea, a negotiation of sorts, after they found out the truth about the will. If they had approached it differently, I might have felt sympathy, but they chose to be cruel. Georgia, in her typical manner, claimed that since I was not going to live long, it made no sense for me to hold so much property in my name. I just brushed off her words. I had already made a decision with my father-in-law. We knew what was going to happen as tensions escalated. Isaac, viewing my response as an insult to his mother, immediately thought of violence and raised his hand against me. My nurse immediately called the police, and by the time they arrived, the mother and son duo had fled the scene. Using my nurse and my father-in-law's witnesses, I asked for a restraining order. Given my fragile state due to my illness, it did not take long for the order to be issued. The court warned Isaac about his behavior, stating that repeating such actions would lead to an immediate charge, no questions asked. Since then, none of those two have contacted either of us, and honestly, considering my health, I don't care. The doctors gave me a time limit now, and I'm just hoping I prove them all wrong. Other than that, no new drama. I'm glad most of you were respectful enough, and yes, I might have liked a couple of dark jokes you played on me. By the way, I've got none, and that's why this entire thing was so hard for me. Top comments from the final update. Comment number 1. You're the literal definition of taking everything to the grave. LMAO. Hey, that's cool though. Your father-in-law's smart decision saved you big time because honestly, it's so rare to have that kind of thinking person around you. It's true that you may not live long, but the way your family reacted, wow, that was extreme. I'm glad I've never dealt with something like this. They're toxic as hell. At least they will die poor. Comment number 2. I'm so curious. Is the woman you're talking about? Didn't she, know that you're sick? How could one woman be so mean to another? I mean, where's the sisterhood? All for a dang man, and one that would not even stay faithful to the same woman he vowed to stay with for all his life. Like, wow. I'm so glad I like girls because honestly, this is too much for me. Good luck soon. I hope you win this war. Well, we just reviewed 2 of the comments, and I have to agree with the last one. I can't believe somebody would be so mean to somebody else, knowing that they were battling such an illness. But yet, OP had to deal with this mother-in-law of today's story that was an absolute nightmare. Lucky for OP, she did have her father-in-law who went so far to try to save her, get her back, give her support, and basically get her to cut out the toxicness, which was unfortunately his son and his wife. I want to know your thoughts on this one, guys. Go ahead, drop your comments down below. This one was an intense one. It had sad moments. It had exhilarating moments, but overall, it looks like karma came again. So drop your thoughts down below, guys. My name is Mr. Reddit. I narrate these sorts of stories every single day. If you guys want to be a part of these daily videos, all you have to do is subscribe to the channel. Hit that like notification. And well, I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace. I believed I had married the love of my life, but everything changed when his father passed away. He transformed into a different person. And by different, I mean he began cheating on me. However, the situation took a much darker turn when he discovered the inheritance that came with his father's passing. He wasn't pleased with the conditions, and I wasn't willing to give in to his demands. My husband spiraled out of control after his father's death, and I couldn't tell if it was due to grief or sheer defiance. It made me wonder if I had unwittingly married a complete psycho. For some background, I had met my husband at a charity event for work. We struck up a conversation and exchanged numbers, though we didn't start talking seriously until a few months later. He appeared charming and sincere, showing particular interest in my worldview, especially since he had grown up in a staunchly religious household, while I held no religious beliefs. I was concerned that this might pose a problem, but he always reassured me that it wouldn't. He even joked about his family's disapproval of him dating someone non-religious. Looking back, I wonder if this was his sole reason for dating me, given what I know now. After a year of seeing each other, he decided it was time for me to meet his family. I remember feeling incredibly nervous about how they would receive me, given my non-religious beliefs, especially his father. Aiden had described his dad as tyrannical, ruling their lives with an iron fist. He claimed that he missed out on many experiences due to his father's strictness during his upbringing. Needless to say, I was already terrified of his father before I even met him. We were headed to a small family dinner at their place, with only his immediate family present: his parents, his brother, his sister-in-law, and their child. When we arrived, his brother was outside on the phone, so I was introduced to him first, and he seemed friendly enough. The next person I met was Aiden's sister-in-law and her 3-year-old niece. They were both lovely, and we had a lot to talk about, especially since she also worked in event planning coordination. While we chatted, Aiden's parents entered the room, and he introduced me to them. I was taken aback when I realized who his father was. I won't reveal his identity, but his father was a prominent figure, responsible for a major charitable organization both locally and internationally. I had seen Aiden's parents at an event I attended, but he had never mentioned their connection to him. His mother appeared somewhat distant but not unkind. I later discovered that Aiden's mother had always been cautious around the girls he brought home because he had a tendency to be attracted to what he called the wild type. Surprisingly, Aiden's father was the complete opposite of what I had expected. He was genuinely kind and understanding, not bothered at all by my lack of religious beliefs. He explained that he valued kindness and principles in people, regardless of their religious background. During our conversation, he shared that Aiden's sister-in-law used to handle the foundation, but had become less involved after becoming a mother. He believed in not taking people away from their families, especially when their children were young. That's why he had outsourced the last event to me. Contrary to my initial assumptions, Aiden's family turned out to be ordinary people with a touch of religion in their lives. Aiden downplayed his father's acceptance, suggesting that his dad probably assumed it was just another phase during his college years. He claimed he had dated numerous girls back then who were what he vaguely referred to as out there, and his parents had always viewed it as an act of defiance. According to Aiden, he had become more serious about me, taking a break from dating to focus on personal growth. Despite the red flags, I believed his explanations, naively accepting his version of events because I was deeply in love. We continued dating for another year, and then he proposed. We decided to live together before getting married, and during another family event, I had a candid conversation with Aiden's brother. He expressed concern about Aiden's behavior, recalling how Aiden used to rebel against their parents, especially their father, during their teenage years. Aiden had a history of fights, particularly because his father was strict about their activities. However, Aiden's father seemed pleased about our engagement, even offering his backyard for our wedding, a proposal Aiden initially resisted, but eventually accepted. After 2 years of living together and saving money, we set a wedding date. I convinced Aiden to honor his father's offer and have the wedding in his parents' backyard. Things seemed fine until 2 months ago when Aiden's father suffered a fatal aneurysm. A drastic change came over Aiden. He started coming home late, often drunk. I initially attributed it to grief, but his behavior raised concerns. When I spoke to his brother, he revealed that Aiden didn't seem sad about their father's death. Instead, he appeared relieved. Aiden's erratic behavior and the uncertainty surrounding their family business prompted me to confront him myself. I stayed up waiting for Aiden, and he didn't return home until around 1 in the morning. He reeked of alcohol and stumbled through the house. Despite knowing it was futile to reason with him in his intoxicated state, I insisted we needed to talk. I emphasized that he shouldn't be driving while drunk, as it could lead to harming himself or someone else. He dismissed my concern, telling me to mind my own business, ending the conversation abruptly. There was no point in discussing anything with him while he was drunk, so I decided to go to bed. The following morning, I woke up to find him vomiting in the bathroom. Seeing he had sobered up slightly, I gave him aspirin and some dry crackers. I questioned his irresponsible behavior, to which he replied that now that his father was no longer controlling him, he felt free to do as he pleased. I pointed out the dangers of drunk driving and his late-night antics, mentioning his brother's worries about him. I then grew angry, criticizing his brother and father, claiming they were obsessed with appearances and cared little about his happiness. He felt they were constantly trying to involve him in a lifestyle he had no interest in and judged him whenever he deviated from their expectations. It was in this moment that I realized Aiden's perceptions of his family might be distorted. While I understood he might carry some residual trauma from his sheltered childhood, it seemed as though he sought to provoke his father and make his family miserable as a form of retaliation. However, his attempts only resulted in his own misery, as they didn't take the bait. Despite my non-religious beliefs, Aiden's family had always been warm and accepting, never imposing their faith or lifestyle on me. His father even invited me to church once, emphasizing there was no pressure for me to attend. Perhaps I had only seen the best side of Aiden's father. I couldn't be certain of what he was like when Aiden was younger. Regardless, it was evident that Aiden needed to mature and move past his grievances to find his own path in life. I confronted him directly, asking if his unhappiness extended to our marriage. He admitted he wasn't happy. I was left speechless, so I got up and left. Currently, I'm writing this from my mother's place, where I've been staying for the past week. Aiden hasn't reached out, and even his brother mentioned he wasn't talking to him either. I'm at a loss about what to do. While this situation undoubtedly warrants considering a divorce, I'm hesitant to make a rash decision. I wonder if his behavior might be a coping mechanism for dealing with his father's death. I'm considering giving him some time to cool off and then suggesting counseling. Top comments from the original post. Comment 1. I empathize with you, OP. Your husband's behavior seems problematic. And while I don't advocate for immediately resorting to divorce in every marital issue, given his consistent suspicious behavior, it might be worth considering, especially considering his recent actions. I find it puzzling why he chose this moment, after his father's death, to act this way. Wouldn't it have more impact if his dad were still alive? Unless his intentions are something other than tarnishing the family name, his reasoning just doesn't make sense to me. Regardless, I think it's crucial to assess your relationship after this incident. Addressing these issues now can prevent future problems. I hope counseling proves helpful. Best of luck. Comment 2. OP, it appears your husband might be grappling with religious trauma from his childhood, as you suggested. If your father-in-law was different when Aiden was a child, there might be deep-seated issues at play. I've seen cases where strict evangelicals resort to harsh disciplinary methods to keep their kids in line. Some churches even pressure members to remain in unhappy marriages, fearing divorce. Aiden's fixation on his father's opinion indicates underlying issues that need exploration. While therapy is a step in the right direction, it might not be enough. Individual therapy sessions for your husband could help him work through his childhood trauma. Just because his family is pleasant around you doesn't necessarily mean they're genuinely nice. It might simply be a facade tailored for your benefit. Update number 1. I'm struggling to find the right words for this update. I feel utterly numb. I'm still at my mother's place, but I did return home briefly after about 2 weeks away. I attempted to reach out to Aiden through calls and texts, but he refused to respond. Then, I received a call from his sister-in-law, asking to meet for lunch. When we met, her husband was with her at a local coffee shop. She inquired about how I was doing and about the situation with Aiden. I didn't hold back. I shared the truth about his late nights, excessive drinking, and overall irresponsible behavior. I explained that I had been staying at my mother's to give him space before suggesting couples therapy. Unfortunately, he hadn't been answering my calls. During our conversation, my brother-in-law dropped a bombshell. Aiden had been using the foundation's funds to indulge in expensive hotel rooms and escorts. When confronted, Aiden claimed he had inherited part of the foundation, justifying his spending. However, his brother clarified that matters regarding their father's will were still being resolved, and Aiden's claims were baseless. Aiden had also informed his brother that we were no longer together, citing my supposed move out as his justification. Of course, this was far from the truth. Aiden's brother and sister-in-law apologized profusely for the mess, expressing their disbelief. They had thought Aiden had settled down when he married me, just as I had believed. Aiden's anger toward their father, they explained, stemmed from their high school years when he used to hang out with a rowdy crowd, engaging in activities that alarmed their father due to their family's tragic history involving a drunk driver. Grateful for their honesty, I returned home the next day and began packing most of my belongings. Aiden walked in while I was in the midst of it all, silent. He handed me an envelope containing divorce papers. He revealed that he was aware his siblings had told me everything and felt no remorse. He claimed the only reason he hadn't divorced sooner was to ensure he wouldn't be written out of his father's will. With his father gone, he asserted his newfound freedom. He offered me the house and informed me that movers would collect his belongings the next day. He planned to upgrade to something bigger and better with his inheritance share. I was so shocked that I couldn't utter a word. I continued packing silently, wanting to be away from him. Once I had loaded my belongings into my car, I drove back to my parents' place. I showed them the divorce papers and retreated to my room, where I broke down in tears. I couldn't comprehend the cruel turn my life had taken. Despite my unwavering commitment, he discarded our marriage as if it meant nothing. Tomorrow, I have an appointment scheduled with a divorce attorney. I don't intend to fight this. If he wants to leave, that's fine with me. Here's the second update for you all. And things have taken quite an interesting turn. I had my meeting with my lawyer, who ensured I understood the terms outlined in the settlement. I would keep the house, and we would each retain our own assets, including wedding rings and gifts. Since we didn't have a joint bank account, there were no financial complications to resolve. Honestly, I might end up selling the house. There are no good memories associated with it anymore. Since then, I've been trying to move past this situation. I'm still staying at my parents' place for now. They seem happy to have me around, or maybe they're just trying to cheer me up. I plan to leave after selling the house and find something smaller. Now, here's the intriguing part. Out of nowhere, I received a call from Aiden's brother. We engaged in some normal small talk, and then he asked if I was free the following Monday. I was, so he insisted I join them for a meeting with their dad's lawyer to finalize his estate matters. I was unsure of my involvement, but he insisted I should come and assured me that he'd make sure Aiden wouldn't speak to me and that we'd be seated far apart. Reluctantly, I agreed. On Monday morning, I arrived at the lawyer's office. Aiden's brother, now my former brother-in-law, met me outside and thanked me for coming. He escorted me to the lawyer's office, where Aiden, his mother, and the man I assumed was the lawyer were present. I approached their mother, offering my condolences and inquiring about her well-being. We hadn't spoken since the funeral. She expressed her sympathies for what happened between Aiden and me. According to her, she and her late husband had done their best to guide him, but he chose a different path. The lawyer then sat us all down, apologizing for the time it took to settle the father's affairs due to various complexities. The crucial part of the meeting was this: most of the money would be donated to charity to support the foundation. The foundation's management would pass to the oldest son, excluding Aiden. The remaining funds were allocated to his wife, his eldest son, and his wife, as well as a school fund for his grandchild. Surprisingly, he left money for Aiden, but with a condition. Our marriage had to last at least 5 years. Additionally, if we had a child, a school fund would be established for them. Notably, he left money for me without any attached conditions. This wasn't a small sum. We were talking millions. The lawyer's face when his father expressed concern that Aiden might squander the money on inappropriate indulgences like escorts and alcohol. At the end of the meeting, the lawyer informed us that he would schedule individual signing sessions for the paperwork and addressed any questions or concerns we had. As soon as we were dismissed, I swiftly left, noticing Aiden's gaze following me from across the room, as if he wanted to talk. I left before he could approach me. As I write this the next morning, Aiden has been bombarding my phone with calls and messages. Despite his efforts, I want absolutely nothing to do with him after all he put me through. Update number 3. Aiden's behavior has become increasingly erratic in his search for me. After failing to reach me through my phone, he attempted to contact his brother to inquire about my whereabouts. However, I hadn't seen any of them since our meeting with the lawyer. Aiden's brother warned me to lay low for a while since Aiden was frantically searching for me. True to his words, Aiden showed up at my parents' house one day looking for me. Fortunately, I wasn't there. My dad informed him that I was out of town for an event and uncertain about my return date. Aiden left a message, urging me to call him, insisting that we needed to talk. I had no desire to engage with him further, but his persistent attempts to reach me pressured me into making the call to put an end to his relentless pursuit. I decided to call him when I knew I had ample time and emotional strength to handle the conversation. I didn't want him to believe he still held any power over me. I called around 6 o'clock in the evening, assuming he would be at home. He answered eagerly, expressing happiness at hearing from me and inquiring about my well-being. He spoke as if he hadn't cast aside our marriage without a second thought. He started by apologizing for his selfishness during the divorce and acknowledged the pain he caused me. He admitted he should have respected the commitment we made, even if he wasn't as content as he hoped to be. I let him speak, then sighed and calmly stated that I had moved on from our marriage, focusing on other aspects of my life. I then confronted him, asking for the real reason he was checking up on me. He swore it was merely to reconnect, how I was doing, and if we could have more conversations in the future. I responded with a straightforward no, and made it clear that if he only called to check on my well-being, there was nothing else to discuss. He urged me to wait, and then finally, the truth emerged. Aiden admitted that filing for divorce had been a mistake. He confessed that he had been naive and driven by his resentment towards his father, and that he didn't mean the hurtful things he had said to me. He expressed a desire to work things out and suggested going to counseling, but I reminded him that my attorney had already filed the paperwork. The divorce was finalized, and our marriage was over, just as he had wanted. I pointed out that he was the one who initiated the process and followed through with it, and I had given him the freedom he sought. I ended the call and haven't spoken to him since, nor do I wish to engage with him further. I hope he learns a lesson from this, but I won't be used to help him gain financial advantages. Update number 4. It's been a while since my last update, as I've been busy with various life events. Business has been thriving, and I'm currently writing this in between engagements. First, I had a meeting with my lawyer to sign the divorce paperwork. I had the option to choose between receiving a lump sum of money or monthly payments, and I opted for the monthly payments. I also found a home that I like and am awaiting the bank's decision. Additionally, I recently had a meeting with Aiden's brother and sister, the first time we've met since the lawyer's appointment. We discussed a charity event that the foundation is hosting in memory of their father, and I'm assisting with the planning. As a part of the event, I've been scouting various venues. During our conversation, I received an update on Aiden. He had falsely accused me of taking the house from him in the divorce. However, they already knew this wasn't true because divorce filings are public and can be accessed by anyone. When they asked him why he was lying, he expressed frustration and stated that I should have given him the house back, given that I had received a substantial sum of money from his father. I clarified that if he wanted the house back, it was available on the market, and he could purchase it. They also mentioned that he was living in an apartment near his workplace, and he inquired about how I was doing through his brother. If he could get more involved in the foundation to earn some extra money, but his brother shut down that idea. He made it clear that there was no way Aiden would be put on the payroll, especially after the stunt he pulled with the foundation funds. And that's the extent of the drama up until now. I'm sincerely hoping this marks the end of it, as I am determined to move past Aiden and all the chaos he brought into my life. I refuse to let him waste another moment of my time. Top comments from the updates. Comment number 1. Well done, OP, for not falling into his trap. As much as divorce is painful, it's sometimes akin to removing a tumor. This guy was toxic for you and merely used you to fulfill his sick revenge fantasy against his father. It seems like his dad was aware of his son's questionable character and ensured he received something for his pain. He appeared to consider you a part of his family. Kudos to your brother-in-law for supporting you. Many men stay silent when their friends and family members behave atrociously. I'm relieved he's not one of them. Additionally, don't let your ex manipulate or pressure you into having a child together. He'll likely continue bothering you. So don't give in, OP. Comment number 2. I somewhat agree with your ex, OP. Perhaps you could have at least given him the house back. I understand the divorce was finalized, and the paperwork was in order, and I comprehend the pain he caused you. However, it feels petty to deny him a place to live. I'm certain your lawyers could have navigated the bureaucratic hurdles and transferred the house to his name. Also, your father-in-law is just as petty. Why did only your husband have conditions on his inheritance? If he wanted to squander it irresponsibly, that should have been his choice. Forcing someone to stay married for 5 years just to obtain the money feels distasteful. All right, let's have a discussion about this. I'm curious about your thoughts, especially concerning the last comment. This specific comment stirred up quite a reaction in the original post. Almost everyone disagreed with the commenter. The majority could see that OP's ex got what he deserved, but this person's perspective was entirely different. What are your thoughts on this comment? Feel free to share your opinions down below in the comments section. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you for joining me today. My name is Mr. Reddit, and I narrate stories daily. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you'd like to support the channel. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. I'll be back tomorrow. Remember, kindness is always cool. Peace. My sister-in-law, 23 female, is my husband's 28 male half-sister. She was the product of their mother's infidelity. His father divorced their mother when he was 12 after he found out through a paternity test she wasn't his. My father-in-law refused to have anything to do with my sister-in-law, but continued to have a relationship with my husband. Because of this, my sister-in-law is very clingy to my husband. My husband is also very protective of his sister and generally doesn't tolerate anything negative being said about her, which is why I'm posting this here before mentioning anything to him. My husband and I bought a house last year, which has its own indoor swimming pool. My sister-in-law was super excited when she saw it and asked if she could use it sometimes with her friend. We said it was fine, as long as she gave us a notice before she turned up. Her and her friend, Chloe, have used it many times before, but almost never when my husband is home. He is a lawyer and works long hours. With lockdown, my husband has started to work from home. My sister-in-law asked me if she and Chloe could come over and use the pool. I told her I was uncomfortable with them coming over as I'm pregnant and don't want to accidentally expose the baby to anything risky. My sister-in-law then asked if she and Chloe quarantined for 2 weeks, would they be able to come over? My husband said it was fine. 2 weeks later, they turn up to my house. My husband was in his office, so they go straight to the pool after making small talk. My husband ends up coming out after an hour, and we're hanging out in the kitchen. My sister-in-law walks in to get a drink, and she starts talking to my husband. Before she goes back to the pool, she says, "Chloe's going to be so happy to see you." It was weird because my husband and Chloe aren't close. Chloe comes into the kitchen 2 minutes later and spends the rest of her time talking to my husband until he excuses himself to get back to work. She's super giggly and smiley when she talks to him. He would say something sarcastic, and she would laugh like it was the funniest joke she's ever heard. It honestly felt like she was flirting with him. Before she went back to the pool, she gave me this weird smirky look. Before they leave, they asked my husband if he's working from home every day of the week. He confirms he is. The next 2 weeks, they come over to the house to swim every single day. Except Chloe never gets in the water. Instead, she hangs around the house in her bikini. She was previously wearing a one-piece if it makes a difference, every single day. Whenever my husband comes out to hang around me, she quickly interrupts him and keeps him talking until he has to go back to work. I made lunch for us all, and when I excused myself to call my husband down, my sister-in-law quickly stopped me and said Chloe could call him for me. They shared a look, and Chloe looked really happy when she went to get him. Chloe has also started to get touchier with my husband. She's put her hands on his chest and arms, stands or sits really close to him. To my husband's credit, he does usually create space between them whenever she does something like this. The reason I believe my sister-in-law is in on this is because she's made a few pregnancy-related jabs at me recently. She told me a story about how one of her friend's boyfriends was cheating on her, and then said something along the lines of, "Did you know a lot of men start cheating when their wives are pregnant?" She's also made comments about how I look chubby now, and it looks weird next to my husband because he's well-built. If she spots my husband out of the office, she quickly goes to inform Chloe. I know pregnancy hormones can mess with a person's brain, so I'm wondering if I'm just looking for something that isn't there. My sister-in-law sent me a text yesterday asking if they could come over to swim next week, and I really want to say no, but I know she'll whine to my husband if I do. I ideally want to have a conversation with him before then, but I'm not sure if I should mention the flirting. Am I being delusional? Too long, didn't read, sister-in-law and her friend are constantly asking to come over to use our pool, but her friend never swims. Instead, she waits around to start talking with my husband. She seems very flirtatious whenever she talks to him, but I'm not sure if it's just pregnancy hormones getting to me. Well, I read and reread all of the comments on the original post to try and figure out how I was going to bring up the issue. Turns out I didn't have to. We were watching a movie and my phone lit up with another text from my sister-in-law telling me she was now going to be here at 1 p.m. the next day to swim with Chloe. My husband saw it and told me to tell her not to come. This is really weird behavior for my husband because he tends to do anything to accommodate my sister-in-law and very rarely refuses her anything. I asked him if something had happened, and he shrugged it off, and we kept watching the movie. A few minutes later, he paused the movie and said he wanted to ask me a question. He asked if I'd noticed Chloe never swam when she came to our house. I wish I could say I was calm and collected like the comments were advising, but I ended up laughing hysterically. I was honestly just so relieved he brought it up instead of me having to be the one to do it. I think my husband thought I was losing my mind. When I finally stopped laughing, he repeated the question and said he wanted a serious answer. I said, "Of course I've noticed," and he awkwardly replied, "So, you must have noticed the other thing too." To summarize the conversation that followed, my husband hadn't noticed Chloe was flirting with him the first few days because he was so busy with work. He wasn't really paying attention to anything else. He said when she started getting handsy is when he suddenly had the light bulb moment that she was into him. He says he didn't want to unnecessarily stress me out, so he never mentioned anything, but he was worried I'd noticed too and thought he was interested because he hadn't immediately shut it down. He realized we would eventually have to have this talk, but he wasn't sure how to bring it up. Oh, the irony. He did privately speak to Chloe and told her he was happily married and wasn't interested in starting anything with anyone else. Apparently, she never took him seriously because she kept doing it. In the end, he called his sister on Sunday to tell her either she got her to stop or Chloe couldn't come over anymore. His sister ended up having a tantrum and said a few nasty things about me / the baby / our relationship. She insisted I was somehow behind his request and made some comments about how I was controlling and insecure because I looked like a beach whale and Chloe was younger and hotter. He was pretty pissed at this and said if she said something like that about me again, he would stop speaking to her. She claimed I had baby trapped him, and when my husband pointed out we were already married so I didn't need to trap him, and that he was the one who wanted to start a family, she kept insisting I had manipulated him into feeling that way. She claimed he was unhappy in our relationship and he always looked tired because I was forcing him to slave away to fund my fancy lifestyle. Whilst I sat on my ass all day, he pointed out he chose to be a lawyer knowing he would have to work long hours, and I had only recently left my job, so her accusations were baseless. She said some other stuff along the same lines, but the thing that made my husband finally snap was when she said the baby, was already ruining everything, and it was just going to get worse when it was born, and he should have dragged me to the abortion clinic whilst he had the chance. He told her neither her nor Chloe were welcome in our home anymore until they apologized for how they'd been behaving and for the things my sister-in-law said. He said he wasn't sure he could ever forgive or forget what she'd said about our child, even if she did apologies, and he couldn't believe she would even think something like that, let alone say it. Apparently, she started crying and said she was sorry, that she didn't mean it, and she was just scared to lose him, and that she wasn't thinking clearly. He hung up on her. He showed me his phone, and she's been calling him and texting him since, begging him to reply. He asked if she'd said anything to me. I was debating whether to say anything or not, but he kept insisting he knew she had said something, and he wanted to know what it was. I told him the things I mentioned in the original post and a few other things she had said. He asked me why I never mentioned anything when she first said it, and I mentioned how he got really defensive whenever I said anything even slightly negative about his sister, and he got defensive. I pointed out he was doing it again, and after some back and forth he admitted that maybe he was a little bit defensive when it came to her, but he promised to stop, and he wanted to make sure we could talk about anything, including his sister. He ended up mentioning wanting to try couples counseling. He said it wasn't because he thought there was something wrong with our relationship, but apparently he has been speaking to his dad a lot recently, and he mentioned one thing he regretted about his marriage with mother-in-law is that they never went to therapy until the cracks in their relationship were too big. In his current marriage they go, and it's helped him avoid the mistakes of his first marriage. I agreed, so we're probably going to try that soon. My husband thinks my sister-in-law will eventually turn up even if we tell her not to, but he promised he'd deal with her if she does. So, Reddit, I guess you were right. I really did just need to speak to him. Thanks for the advice and comments. I enjoyed reading them all. Story 2. My husband slapped my best friend for staring at my breasts. Me and my husband have been together for 5 years and married for 1 year. I just had a baby several months ago, and I'm breastfeeding her. Before my pregnancy, I was a B cup, but after having a baby, my breasts have increased to DD. My husband, of course, loves the increase in my chest size and has lately been expressing sudden bouts of jealousy if anyone showed a little too much attention to me. The weekend before, both of our families and friends gathered together for a family celebration. Everyone congratulated us on the baby and oohed and awed, all of that usual stuff. Somewhere halfway through dinner, we were all peacefully eating and conversing. My best friend, we'll call her Amy, was staring a long time at my breasts, and I said, "You look like you want a taste of my Norks," and we both laughed. But without warning, my husband slapped my best friend on the face and said her breasts are only for me to look at. Amy was stunned, and she immediately left the table while I looked at my husband in shock and asked what the fuck was he thinking. He said, "Sorry, I'm a bit territorial." Now, he knows the way Amy and I joke around, and he's never acted this jealous before. And over what? Her gazing at my breasts that long? Why wouldn't she or anyone I know for that matter? They're double D's now, for Christ's sake. His parents saw everything. Everyone did. and they said that he has every right to defend his territory. I'm sorry, are we animals? I went after Amy, who was crying and already had an angry red mark on the side of her face. I calmed her down and she told me, we were just joking around. What if he hits you someday? I don't see my husband capable of doing that, but I am worried about his jealous that appeared during and after my pregnancy. Is this normal for men to act territorial during this period? And even though that doesn't excuse him from hitting a woman who is my best friend. Edit. The red mark has by now turned into a horrendous bruise, and I'm now freaking out because my husband has never shown this amount of jealousy before, not even close. And the more time passes, the more I think that she might be right, and if he can't control his impulses, then what guarantee is there that he won't do the same to me? Edit 2. I'm far from okay with it, and I've been cold towards him and keeping my distance since that day. Every time I see her and the bruise on her mark, I feel rage inside of me, and I cried this morning because I can see that my best friend is in pain. And she's still not going to press charges because I'm her friend and he's my husband, and all she cares about is me. I'm terrified at the thought of being a single mother, and I don't know if I can handle motherhood on my own. But Amy said that she will support me and help me. When he hit her, I was in shock, but I had a fleeting thought of stabbing him with a knife that was laying in the middle of the table. But I also had the fleeting thought I can't go to jail because I'm a mother. I love my best friend. When we were in college, a guy roofied her drink, and I made him instantly regret it, so I do care for my best friend deeply. Update. I recently made a post about this. To briefly recap it, we were at a family celebration, and my best friend, Amy, fake name, was staring at my breasts for a long time, and I jokingly said, "You look like you want a taste of my Norks." We both laughed, but my husband slapped her without warning and said her breasts are only for me to look at. She left the room, and when I asked my husband what the fuck was he thinking, he said, "Sorry, I'm a bit territorial." His parents saw everything and said that he had a right to defend his territory. When I followed Amy and found her crying, she asked me, "What if he does that to you someday?" She had an angry red mark on her face from where he had slapped her. I had a baby several months ago, and I'm currently breastfeeding, so my former B cups increased to DD. More than a few people have been giving me attention because of them, and my husband has been having sudden bouts of jealousy lately. Amy and I have been joking about my increased breasts. So, to get to the update, first Amy's red mark turned into a horrendous bruise, and her side of the face was a little swollen for a few days, but has returned to its normal size. I've been massaging her injury and rubbing it with arnica oil, but she's still taking ibuprofen. Seeing her in pain has been painful for me, and I've cried a few times while taking care of her wound. And all she cared about is me getting away from my husband. The next day, after I had posted my first post, my husband had come to me and apologized for acting territorial and striking Amy. He realizes that he should have just played along because he knows that our friendship would never cross the platonic friend line, and he'll go to therapy to fix his jealousy periods. I accepted his apology because he's the father of my child. But when we had sex the next few days, I felt nothing. Zero connection. I told him to stop on the third day when he was halfway, and he did stop and ask me what was wrong. I told him I was not feeling so good, and he just went to sleep. I kept replaying that slap over and over again this past week, and the more time passes, the more I realize that even though he might be a good husband and father, slapping a woman just because she looked at my breasts for too long in a joking way is something I can't forgive him for. I can't continue to live with a man who would do that. I don't even feel love for him anymore, just dead feelings. My baby and I are staying at my parents' place now, and I told my parents everything that has happened, and my father swore that if he was at that table when it happened, he would have beat my husband into a bloody pulp. Also, I want to add that my parents weren't at the family celebration, but my other family members were, including my younger sister. They were all in shock, and nobody said or did anything. My father is currently getting a lawyer for me, and the entire process terrifies me. My husband has contacted me already and asked why would I do this when he already apologized and said he was going to go therapy. And isn't that supposed to be enough reason for me to stay? He called me unloyal, double-crossing, and an unworthy cunt. He also said that there were a million times he could have cheated on me when I was pregnant and nursing. But he never did, and he should get credit for that because that's what other men would have done. His parents told me that I'm a selfish whore who can't stay true to her husband and has chosen some gay bitch over her loving and loyal husband. All of that made my blood boil, and I want to push past my fears of being a single mom and just divorce him. Amy is still more than happy to help me with the baby and even suggested for me to move in with her so she can be there to help anytime, just as long as I get away from that POS. Edit. Amy hasn't filed a police report nor pressed charges yet, but it's completely up to her if she wants to do it or not because she said that since she was the one who was assaulted, it's her decision. As a 26-year-old woman, I had always been inclined towards a more solitary existence. This inclination grew after my parents' divorce during my teenage years. They swiftly transitioned into new relationships as if they were playing a game of house, leaving me feeling like an abandoned puzzle piece that no longer fit. In the blink of an eye, I transformed from their cherished daughter to an awkward guest at their joyous family gatherings. The isolation weighed on me more than words could express. However, I managed to construct a life of my own, distancing myself from their facade of harmony. I secured a job, found a small yet comfortable apartment, and even welcomed a feline companion into my life. Just when I thought I had successfully detached from their world of make-believe, my parents suddenly started reaching out, expressing a desire to reconnect. A part of me yearned to believe it was genuine, but when my father clumsily mentioned a significant inheritance from my wealthy grandparents during a phone call, a harsh truth dawned on me. Their newfound affection wasn't for me, it was for the potential windfall. My grandparents' fortune was substantial, but there was a catch. They believed in the unity of family. The stipulation was that the inheritance would only be distributed when the entire family gathered for the reading, which included me, the family outcast. If I were absent, my parents would be left without a penny from the million-dollar fortune. It became evident that their sudden desperation to bring me back into the fold was solely for their financial gain. They begged and pleaded for me to accompany them to my grandparents' house, attempting to guilt-trip me with stories of family bonds and nostalgic memories. Yet I saw through their insincere sentiments. All they desired was to secure their future luxury. It was a bitter realization that my parents viewed me as the key to their inheritance, and I grappled with a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, and a sense of vindication, all warring within me. I faced a choice. I could make them suffer for their manipulation, neglect, and insincerity, or I could swallow my pride, play along, and ensure they got what they wanted. It was a challenging decision, but then it struck me. I had a unique opportunity to turn the tables on them. They needed me, not the other way around. I could play their game, make them believe they had won, show up at the reading, and then at the last moment, ensure they left with nothing. It was a devious plan, no doubt, but it was the least they deserved for using me as a pawn in their grief-fueled game. So, I agreed to accompany them to my grandparents' house, playing the dutiful daughter and acting as if I were none the wiser to their scheme. But I had a trick up my sleeve. I wouldn't let them succeed, and I wouldn't allow them to profit off my compliance. I reached out to my grandparents' lawyer to gain a clear understanding of the precise conditions outlined in the will. The lawyer confirmed that the inheritance was undeniably conditional upon the entire family being present during the reading of the will. If I chose not to participate, the entire fortune would be donated to various charities. This revelation filled me with a sense of power, but it also stirred an annoying feeling of guilt within me. Yes, my parents had manipulated and neglected me, but the question lingered. Was it morally right for me to deprive them of their inheritance out of spite? I was torn, my emotions oscillating wildly between righteous indignation and guilt, back and forth. I couldn't help but think about my grandparents, who had always shown me kindness and love. They were traditionalists, longing for family unity, even if it had become a mere formality at this point. Would they have wanted me to use their will to settle scores? This question haunted my thoughts, keeping me awake for many nights. A part of me yearned to honor my grandparents' wish for family unity, even if it was just a facade. However, another part of me vehemently protested, refusing to be a pawn in my parents' grief-fueled game. During this period, my parents were oddly attentive, checking up on me, inquiring about my life, and even inviting me for meals at their homes with their new partners. It was evident that they were trying to win me over. Yet their efforts only fueled my resentment. It served as a harsh reminder of the love and attention they could have given me but chose not to until money entered the equation. My bitterness grew, and my determination to carry out my plan intensified. However, amidst my resolve, I couldn't shake off the nagging feeling of guilt. I found myself trapped in a moral dilemma where, regardless of my choice, I seemed destined to be the villain in someone's eyes. After my conversation with the lawyer and my increasing interactions with my parents, I found myself engulfed in a whirlwind of conflicted emotions. To help navigate through this turmoil, I made the decision to seek professional help and began attending therapy sessions. In these sessions, I discovered an outlet for my resentment, hurt, and confusion, hoping to find clarity and peace amidst the storm of conflicting emotions. I began to unravel the depth of my emotions and how they were shaping my choices, particularly during therapy sessions. It was in these sessions that the idea of having a genuine conversation with my parents surfaced. Despite my initial aversion to the notion, I couldn't ignore the possibility that it might provide me with some closure. In addition to therapy, I confided in my closest friend, Leela, who had been my unwavering support throughout this ordeal. She echoed my therapist's advice, suggesting that I give my parents an opportunity to explain themselves. With a mix of apprehension and courage, I decided to attend a family gathering at my father's place. The atmosphere was as strained as I had anticipated, with my parents, their partners, and me, a picture of superficial harmony that belied the underlying tension. Amidst the discomfort, I seized the chance to confront my parents honestly. I confronted them about their neglect, their opportunistic attempts at reconciliation, and their lack of genuine remorse or effort to repair our relationship. I had hoped for a heartfelt apology or some sign of genuine regret, but instead, I was met with awkward silence, defensive responses, and feeble attempts to shift the blame. It was disappointing, albeit unsurprising. This encounter solidified my conviction that their sudden interest in me was solely driven by the impending inheritance. While it stung, it also brought a sense of liberation. I no longer felt compelled to maintain the facade of a happy family for the sake of my grandparents' will. So here I am, Reddit, still at a crossroads but armed with a clearer understanding of my emotions and my parents' motives. My determination to prevent them from profiting off my presence has only intensified. However, I couldn't shake off the guilt of defying my grandparents' last wish to see their family together. I want to express my deep gratitude for your continued support, advice, and diverse perspectives, which have been invaluable in helping me navigate this incredibly challenging situation. The past few weeks have been an emotional roller coaster as I grappled with my feelings, confronted my parents, and wrestled with guilt and anger. In the end, I made a decision. I chose not to attend any more family gatherings. I simply couldn't endure the fake affection and underlying tension any longer. It wasn't worth the distress it was causing me. My decision effectively cut off my parents' access to the inheritance. Despite the tormenting guilt, I felt an odd sense of relief. After much contemplation, I decided to speak to my grandparents about the entire situation. I was anxious about their reaction, but I felt it was necessary. I owed them an explanation. I mustered the courage to visit my grandparents and lay bare the truth. I detailed my parents' sudden interest in reigniting our relationship, their transparent attempts to manipulate me, the confrontation, and ultimately, my decision. Surprisingly, my grandparents were remarkably understanding. They expressed their dismay at my parents' behavior, sincerely apologized for inadvertently causing me stress, and fully respected my choice. They voiced their pride in the person I had become, despite the challenges I have faced. Most importantly, they made it abundantly clear that they did not want their will to be a tool for manipulation or greed. In an unexpected twist, my grandparents chose to revise their will. They excluded my parents from the inheritance, opting instead to distribute it among various charities they had been supporting for years. They believed this was a better use of their wealth, avoiding further conflict and greed within the family. They expressed gratitude for my honesty and reassured me that their love for me was not contingent on the whims of a will. Their understanding and love overwhelmed me, lifting an immense burden off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt free. I was no longer a pawn in my parents' game. I had broken free, and it was profoundly liberating. Upon sharing my decision with my parents, they were understandably furious, blaming me for their loss. A pang of guilt momentarily gripped me, but I swiftly brushed it off. I reminded myself that I was not responsible for their greed or their choices. Now, I am finally at peace. I managed to escape the toxic environment that had been suffocating me, and I am eagerly looking forward to moving on from this ordeal. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to all of you on Reddit for being a part of my journey and helping me navigate this challenging situation. Your support and encouragement empowered me to stand up for myself in a situation where I was being used as a pawn for financial gain. It is truly commendable that I decided to talk to my grandparents about this matter. In the end, my grandparents chose to do what they felt was right. They donated their money to charity instead of allowing it to fuel the greed and ulterior motives of others. My parents were the ones who introduced deceit into the equation and ultimately paid the price for their actions. It's evident that you made sincere efforts to mend your relationship with your parents. You confronted them about your feelings, their behavior, and their lack of remorse, which confirmed their true intentions. You had every right to refuse to be a part of a charade, and your grandparents' understanding of the situation further validates your choice. It's truly unfortunate that your parents only showed interest in rekindling the relationship when money was involved. Their inability to offer a sincere apology when confronted speaks volumes. You took control of the situation, made a tough decision, and it's heartening to hear that your grandparents supported you. On another note, I'm a 27-year-old woman and soon to be married to the man I've been with for 6 years, Josh, a 29-year-old man. We've weathered various challenges together, strengthening our bond over time. We are both overjoyed about our impending marriage and the prospect of embarking on a new chapter in our lives together. I had chosen to take Josh's last name, a tradition in our society that resonates with me. Despite its lack of universal acceptance, I have always appreciated the idea of sharing a name with him and officially becoming a part of his family. I find comfort in the recognition of our unity. When I shared this decision with Josh, he was supportive and understanding, which only deepened my love and respect for him. His unwavering support reinforced my choice, giving me the confidence to embrace it fully. However, when I excitedly shared my decision with my friends and family, their reactions were unexpected. My fiercely independent and feminist mother expressed her disappointment, believing that I was setting a poor example for my younger sisters by seemingly surrendering my identity. My father, though more understanding, appeared concerned about the potential impact on my relationship with my mother and sisters. Even my friends, most of whom identify as feminists, reacted strongly. They accused me of perpetuating patriarchal norms and believed that by taking Josh's last name, I was sending a message that a woman needed a man to define her identity. I attempted to explain that this was my personal choice, a way to add to my identity rather than relinquish it. I emphasized that feminism was about choice and respecting others' decisions, even if they differed from their beliefs. Their negative reactions left me feeling guilty and uncertain about my decision. I started doubting myself, wondering if I was unknowingly participating in a patriarchal tradition. I found myself torn between my personal happiness and the fear of alienating those who mattered to me. Josh, too, was upset about their responses and offered to talk to them on my behalf. However, I felt it was something I needed to handle independently, despite my determination. Despite my conviction, I found myself feeling unheard and confused in the midst of conflicting opinions. Your overwhelming support and the invaluable advice you've provided have offered me a fresh perspective on my situation, for which I am genuinely grateful. I have always believed in open dialogue as a means to resolve issues, so taking some of your advice to heart, I decided to have a heart-to-heart conversation with my friends and family. I invited them over to our place, hoping that a comfortable and familiar environment would help ease the tension and encourage an open and respectful conversation. I prepared myself to truly listen to their perspectives and explain my viewpoint in a non-confrontational manner, hoping that we could reach a mutual understanding despite our differing opinions. When they arrived, the tension in the room was palpable. I attempted to break the ice with some light-hearted conversation, but it felt like walking on eggshells. Finally, I gathered my courage and broached the topic at hand. I conveyed how their initial reactions had hurt me, making me feel as though they were questioning my beliefs and principles. I emphasized that my choice to take Josh's last name was a deeply personal decision that did not compromise my commitment to feminism and gender equality. I requested that they respect my decision, just as I respected their diverse viewpoints. Their reactions were mixed. My mother appeared relieved that I didn't think she was doubting my beliefs. She clarified that her concern was for how society might perceive me, and she wished to shield me from potential prejudice. My sisters remained silent, listening but not expressing much. My friends, on the other hand, seemed somewhat taken aback. I don't think they anticipated me standing up to them like this. Despite the discomfort, I felt the conversation was necessary. I sensed a weight lifting off my chest, but then things took an unexpected turn. Lydia, one of my friends known for her strong feminist beliefs, took it upon herself to argue against my choice. She labeled it as regressive and accused me of conforming to societal norms. She insisted that if I were a true feminist, I would retain my maiden name as a symbol of rebellion against patriarchal norms. Her words stung, and I found myself wavering, questioning my beliefs and decisions. Was I, in fact, being regressive? Was I unconsciously trying to fit into societal norms? The self-doubt began creeping in again. The rest of the evening became a blur. I felt emotionally drained and exhausted. I excused myself and retreated to my room, leaving them to see themselves out. Josh was incredibly supportive, but I felt as though I had hit a wall. I began to contemplate whether I should reconsider my decision in order to maintain the peace. First and foremost, I want to express my gratitude to all of you for your incredible support and thoughtful advice. It has been a guiding light during this challenging period. Following that uncomfortable confrontation, I spent a few days in introspection, attempting to navigate my thoughts and emotions. I found myself grappling with a constant question: was I compromising my principles? Was it wrong for me to want to take my future husband's name? I shared my concerns with Josh, and he, as always, was understanding. He reassured me of his unwavering support, regardless of the decision I made. To gain clarity and a broader perspective, I decided to seek professional help. I scheduled an appointment with a counselor, hoping it would provide the clarity I needed. The counseling session proved to be enlightening. We delved into my feelings, guilt, conflict, and doubts. The counselor helped me realize that the essence of feminism lies in choice, the freedom to be who you want to be and do what makes you happy, free from societal norms. She emphasized that my decision to take Josh's last name was not a submission to a patriarchal society. Instead, it was a personal choice that brought me genuine joy. Her words resonated deeply with me, instilling a renewed sense of clarity and confidence. I understood that I wasn't relinquishing my identity. I was choosing to enrich it. Taking Josh's last name symbolized our unity and commitment, a choice that was empowering and deeply meaningful. Feeling assured about my decision, I shared this newfound clarity with Josh. He was relieved and glad that I have found peace amidst the chaos. With his unwavering support, I knew I had all I needed. However, I remained concerned about my friends and family, especially my mother and sisters. I didn't want this issue to strain our relationships, so I decided to write them a letter, expressing my thoughts and feelings, hoping they would understand. After days of reflection and internal debate, I made a definitive decision. I chose to take Josh's last name, as we had planned. I felt a newfound conviction that this decision was right for me. It didn't diminish my identity or beliefs. Instead, it reaffirmed my right to make personal choices and live life on my terms. I felt like I had reclaimed a part of myself that had been lost in the midst of the conflict. Determined not to let others' opinions sway me from my chosen path, I penned down a heartfelt letter to my friends and family. In it, I poured out my thoughts and emotions, explaining why I had chosen to take Josh's last name and how it in no way diminished my standing as a feminist or independent woman. I expressed my love and respect for my friends and family, hoping they could find it in their hearts to respect my decision. After sending out the letters, I waited with bated breath for their responses. It took a few days, but the responses started trickling in. My mom was the first to call. Her voice was choked up as she apologized for not understanding my perspective sooner. She acknowledged her mistake in questioning my choice and promised to support me moving forward. My sisters followed suit, offering their apologies and support. However, Lydia, the friend who had been most vocally opposed to my decision, didn't reach out. On the other hand, a few of my other friends did, apologizing for not understanding my point of view earlier. Their responses were a relief. While there were still some unresolved issues, it seemed like my relationships would mend with time. The overall tone was understanding and apologetic, and I felt reassured that I wasn't losing my friends or family over this issue. This experience taught me that personal decisions can have far-reaching implications. However, at the end of the day, it's essential to stay true to ourselves and our beliefs. I am thankful to all of you who stood by me, giving advice, sharing your experiences, and offering words of encouragement. I know the road ahead may still have a few bumps, but I am prepared to face them. I've learned that while it's crucial to value and consider the opinions of those we love, we must not let them overshadow our personal truth. As a staunch feminist, I wholeheartedly believe in the power of personal choice, and that's what feminism is all about. Our identities are not defined by our names, but by who we are and what we stand for. By standing up for my personal choice, I've demonstrated my belief in personal freedom and empowerment, which is a strong feminist statement in itself. I won't let anyone make me believe otherwise. I handled this situation with grace and strength, and I admire myself for it. This situation was undoubtedly tough. It's clear I value my relationships and didn't want to hurt my loved ones, but it's equally important to respect my choices. Relationships should not be contingent on making decisions that align with others' views all the time. True feminism promotes choice, and I have every right to make decisions that bring me happiness. I'm glad I found clarity and stood up for myself. It took courage to do what I did, and I respect myself for it. I am not alone, and I appreciate all the support I received. Thank you all for tuning in to today's stories. If you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, please email us at the address provided in the description. If you'd like to be featured, let us know, and we'll pin your comment at the top. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support truly helps the channel. See you in the next one.
I, a 32-year-old woman, have been married to my husband Ryan, who is 35 years old, for 4 years now. My background is quite different from Ryan's. I come from a broken family where my mother struggled with addiction, and my father had to care for me and my sister. Unfortunately, my sister chose to live with our mom and also became addicted, leaving me with a sense of isolation. In contrast, Ryan's family is a tight-knit and extensive clan. He has a brother, 3 sisters, numerous uncles and aunts, all of whom are incredibly close. They celebrate Christmas together every year, which is a heartwarming experience. I'm truly grateful not only for Ryan, but also for his family. Ryan and his brother Cole don't always see eye to eye, with some remnants of sibling rivalry, though they generally get along. Their fundamental difference lies in their worldviews. Ryan, coming from a big family, has always wanted to have a family of his own, a sentiment I share. I've never experienced the joys of a large, supportive family and the constant activity in the household. On the other hand, Cole vehemently opposes having children. He and his wife, Ruth, refuse to have kids or even be around them, which has become a major point of contention between Ryan and Cole. Things took a turn for the worse when I became pregnant. While everyone in the family was ecstatic and in celebratory spirits, Ruth and Cole acted as though a great tragedy had befallen me. Their comments were hurtful, suggesting I should plan a farewell party instead of a baby shower because I'd be saying goodbye to my life. They also made insensitive remarks about how I'd become fat and ugly for the rest of my life. Ryan attempted to intervene, but they remained stubborn, so we decided to limit contact with them. Fortunately, Ryan's sisters supported our decision, as they were also fed up with Cole and Ruth's behavior. All three of them had kids of their own, and Cole and Ruth were never willing to assist, even in emergencies. My pregnancy was challenging, especially as we were expecting twins, and I battled severe nausea and debilitating swelling in my feet by the end of the second trimester. I used to struggle after walking just 20 meters, gasping for breath. Throughout this challenging period, Ryan had been my rock, offering unwavering support. His sister, Allison, also came to our aid. Among Ryan's 3 sisters, 2 resided in other states. However, Allison, the eldest, lived in the same city as us, and her assistance was a true blessing. Allison herself had a 3-year-old daughter named Sarah, who was an absolute sweetheart. Sarah adored spending time with both Ryan and me and never missed an opportunity to help with babysitting. When my twins were born, our entire family came to celebrate the joyous occasion. However, Cole and Ruth, Ryan's brother and sister-in-law, were notably absent. Despite the help from the rest of the family, managing 2 infants was quite a challenge, but having the support of my family made things more manageable. Then, one night, at 11 p.m., I received a call from Child Protective Services, CPS, informing us that both Ryan and I were required to immediately go to a specific address. I explained that I had twins and at least one parent needed to stay with them. CPS insisted that I come while leaving Ryan with the children, as they had received a report of an unattended child alone in a house a few streets away, and that house belonged to Cole. My mind raced with a million thoughts as I made my way there. Initially, I assumed it was a mistake. I even considered the possibility that one of the 2 had a secret child, but it seemed highly unlikely. Upon arriving at the house, I saw several officers present and a terrified, sobbing Sarah. She was crying so hard that it seemed her lungs might burst. Without hesitation, I rushed to her and embraced her tightly as she clung to me. Sarah's emotional state shocked me. Allison was nowhere to be found, and the CPS representatives began asking me how I knew Zara and if I was aware of her mother's whereabouts. I explained that she was my sister-in-law's daughter, and I was often the one to babysit her in case of emergencies. It left me bewildered as to why Sarah was in this situation. They requested that I call Allison, but she was not answering her phone. Additionally, they inquired with the person who had informed them about what he had witnessed. He explained that he had witnessed a tall woman with short brown hair driving up with Sarah a few hours earlier. My brother-in-law and sister-in-law, Colin and Ruth, were present in the house at that time. According to the witness, he saw them engaged in a heated argument for a while, after which Allison left the house in tears. Within an hour and a half, both Colin and Ruth left the house with bags and everything they needed. When the witness inquired about Sarah's well-being, they dismissively told him to mind his own business. This incident occurred around 8 p.m. The witness waited for their return, but when they didn't come back, he decided to call CPS. I was livid. It felt like steam was coming out of my ears. I couldn't believe the audacity and insensitivity of Colin and Ruth. I was also upset with Allison. Why hadn't she called me? Why did she have to leave Sarah with those 2 irresponsible individuals for such a long time? My anger led me to file a complaint with the police against Colin and Ruth. I didn't care about the consequences. All that mattered was Sarah's safety. When I returned home with Sarah from the police station and shared the details with Ryan, he disagreed with my decision. He insisted that, regardless of their actions, Colin and Ruth were still family, and we didn't know their reasoning behind their behavior. Now, I'm starting to question whether he might be right. I don't have the full story, and my decision to file a complaint might have serious consequences. Despite Sarah's safety, I'm doubting my judgment. Was I too hasty in going to the police without knowing the complete truth? Eventually, we managed to reach Allison. CPS had also contacted her, informing her that Sarah was with them. Allison explained that her husband, Mark, had met with a severe accident, and she had to rush to the hospital. In this emergency, she had contacted Colin and Ruth, asking them to take care of Sarah for just one night. She had promised to collect her the next morning. Allison had even packed Sarah's food, and Sarah, being a quiet and undemanding child, wouldn't have caused them much trouble. All these arrangements were made through texts and calls before she dropped Sarah off at their place. Allison didn't want to burden us because she knew we were already dealing with a lot. When she left Sarah with them, they began berating her, claiming they were child-free and had no time for such responsibilities. Allison pleaded with them because Mark was in critical condition, and she couldn't take Sarah to the hospital with her. Reluctantly, Colin and Ruth agreed. After that, Allison had no idea what happened. She called them at 10 p.m., and they assured her that Sarah was fine. It was only when CPS called her that she realized they had left Sarah alone and gone on a vacation. She was sobbing uncontrollably, mentioning that now that Mark was out of danger, she faced the risk of losing her child. Ryan drove her back from the hospital, and we managed to put both her and Sarah to sleep. Ryan's anger was palpable, and it was the angriest I had ever seen him. He made numerous calls to Cole, at least 20 or more times, but it all went straight to voicemail. My disdain for people had reached a new low, and Colin and Ruth were the ones responsible for setting this new standard. It was indeed a harrowing day. Cole and Ruth eventually returned home. They had been summoned for questioning, and they were furious with me for reporting them when, in their opinion, it was none of my business. I firmly told them to back off, emphasizing that their child-free status should not take precedence over helping the family in times of such distress. Their child-free choice should not outweigh the safety and well-being of a 3-year-old child. I stressed that anything could have happened to Sarah while she was left alone in a house that was not child-proofed. I urged them to reconsider their priorities. Fortunately, the police officer understood Allison's situation, and although Cole and Ruth were let off with a warning, they had to pay a hefty fine. Currently, we are not on speaking terms, and I couldn't be happier. It has been a month since Mark's accident and the entire ordeal. He is getting discharged today. Sarah had been mostly living with us during this time, and she caused no trouble at all. Allison is understandably exhausted, so Ryan will be going to assist her. One of Ryan's other sisters has also come over to lend a helping hand. This has undoubtedly been a tough period for the family, but we made it through. Everyone, including my mother-in-law and father-in-law, has distanced themselves from Cole and Ruth. To be honest, they deserve it. I am simply relieved that the nightmare is over. Regardless of what happened, Sarah is Allison's responsibility, and she should not expect others to make exceptions for her. She is the parent, and she needs to be prepared. I completely understand that some people choose to be child-free, but sometimes you do things for others even if it makes you uncomfortable or annoyed. That's how relationships are built and maintained. It's disheartening to see how selfish they have been. You're definitely not the one at fault here. Neither your brother-in-law nor your mother-in-law have acted like rational and responsible adults, and they had this coming. I'm relieved that nothing happened to Sarah, and I feel deeply sorry for Allison. You absolutely did the right thing, OP. I live in a large apartment complex. One day, as I was heading out with my dog, I needed to take the elevator down. My dog is 8 years old and incredibly well-behaved. She doesn't bark at anyone and has a calm demeanor. She only approaches strangers in public when they signal for her to come to them. She's a medium-sized dog, and I can't imagine anyone finding her intimidating. She is always on a leash when we're outside the house, unless we're in a designated area where dogs can be off-leash. While waiting for the elevator, it arrived, and there were two people inside, a female aged 15 to 20 and another female aged 20 to 25. When the elevator doors opened, my dog attempted to enter, but the younger woman inside started shrieking, loudly expressing her fear of dogs. I calmly informed her that the elevator was for everyone, including dogs, and we both stepped inside. As a courtesy, I kept my dog on a very short leash, positioning her behind my legs at the opposite end of the elevator. However, the passenger continued yelling, insisting that we leave. I responded by saying she could take the next elevator if she didn't want to ride with a dog. Despite her protests, she chose to stay, and we had an uneventful 20-second journey to the ground floor. At no point did she mention being allergic to dogs, which might have warranted me taking a different elevator. Upon exiting, she made several comments, some quite rude, but I ignored her and proceeded to my car. I wonder if I was under any obligation to accommodate her by taking another elevator. I understand the analogy of the sword, meaning if it were another situation, I would have waited. However, in this case, it wasn't about my appearance. It was about my dog, whom I consider part of my family. I find it difficult to accept discrimination against my dog, just as I would against any family member. Am I in the wrong here? Should I have chosen to wait for the next elevator? I appreciate the feedback, even the critical ones. I posted this to learn, grow, and be better. I acknowledge my oversight, and I understand now that it wouldn't have cost me anything to wait for the next elevator. I will make that choice in similar situations in the future. Additional context: my dog was behind my legs, pressed against the elevator wall. The other passenger could have easily exited if they had wished. I want to clarify that I did not corner her, as some have suggested. I was positioned between the other passenger and my dog was on a very short leash. On a related note, we are planning to visit my husband's mother's house for Thanksgiving. I brought up a month ago that we should time our visit differently because my 1-year-old son, whose birthday falls in February, needs a nap and already has issues with being at their house. My son doesn't particularly enjoy visiting their house for some reason, and he's quite resistant to being put down. However, we had a breakthrough in making plans for our Thanksgiving visit. He had a full nap right before we left for their house, which made him more receptive to being there. My mother-in-law and I decided that it would be best for everyone if we met up at their house around 5 in the evening. This way, my son could have a proper nap, eat when he got there, and feel more comfortable. My brother-in-law called her yesterday, and it seems she didn't relay the information to him about our plans for a later dinner. He mentioned that he was going to his girlfriend's mom's place at 6 and wanted to do dinner at noon. This caused my mother-in-law to call my husband, and she was visibly upset, even hyperventilating, apparently because my brother-in-law wanted to change the time and was asking my husband for approval. This is where our argument began. I'm a stay-at-home mom, and my husband works full-time. I firmly believe that children up to 7 years old should have their naps because it's crucial for their development. I expressed my frustration to my husband, explaining that if I had known the time was going to change, I would have adjusted our son's sleep schedule. I didn't want to go there and have an upset child who missed his nap and wouldn't eat until 4. My husband's response was that our son would have to do things he doesn't want to in life, so it shouldn't matter if he doesn't get a proper nap. I became upset because I felt like he wasn't prioritizing our child's needs over dinner plans. I understand that I could be the one in the wrong here, but I don't see how it's fair to our son to skip his nap altogether. I just didn't understand why my husband wasn't putting our child's well-being first over dinner plans. I recognize that my child doesn't revolve around our schedule. Instead, we should adapt our schedule to meet his needs. I got upset because I couldn't comprehend why my husband wasn't putting our child's well-being first over dinner plans. I understand that I might be in the wrong here, but I don't see how it's fair to our son to skip his nap altogether. I'm torn, Reddit, so please let me know if I'm being unreasonable here. I'll gladly answer any questions to provide more clarity. Update: I've decided to give up the fight and just go when they say. Everyone else's happiness seems to matter more in this situation, and I've reached a point where I no longer care. When my husband came home, he immediately called his mom and vented his frustration about the sudden change in dinner time, emphasizing how absurd it was to cater to his older brother. He passionately expressed his annoyance for nearly 2 hours, highlighting his brother-in-law's disrespectful behavior, which we've grown to despise. Oh my goodness, everyone in this post is absolutely wild. I want to express my gratitude to all of you who truly understand the challenges of children's sleep schedules and the chaos that ensues when it's disrupted. We've decided to comply with the new time, although my husband informed his mother that we might not be able to eat much, as our son is likely to be upset, given the change in his routine. Luckily, he napped an extra hour today, so hopefully that might make things a bit easier, but who knows for sure. Additionally, I am thankful that my husband stood up for us. Initially, he brushed off the significance of our son missing his nap, saying, "Who cares?" just to pacify his mother. However, after reflecting on the situation during the rest of his shift, he came to his senses. Being the youngest in the family, he often feels overshadowed by his mother's preference for his older brothers. There's an ongoing struggle between the siblings, and my husband frequently feels disregarded. Regarding our son sleeping at their house, it's simply not an option. Unlike some children who can fall asleep anywhere, our son doesn't easily settle down. Unfortunately, my husband's family consists only of his mom, his 2 brothers, and his stepdad, with no cousins or extended family. It's a small family, which usually makes planning events ahead of time easier. We confirmed the dinner time with his mom on Sunday, and she admitted that the confusion was entirely her fault for not informing his brother about the set time. However, she has chosen to ignore my husband's inquiry about why she's prioritizing his brother's wishes over the previously agreed upon schedule. The older boys tend to use the tactic of threatening not to show up as leverage, and she believes my husband will follow suit and not attend at all. We've decided to stick with the changed dinner time, putting an end to our earlier disagreements. Yes, my husband has his flaws, just like anyone else, and I'm well aware of my own shortcomings. We make a conscious effort to acknowledge our issues and work on them as a united front, always striving to do what's best for each other. Holidays tend to be a bit challenging for both of us, creating stress and tension at an all-time high. He's been in this situation before and understands it, but the way we met is quite unconventional and wild. However, we genuinely love each other deeply. My husband works 6 days a week, putting in long hours of 9 to 10 hours a day to provide for our family and pay for the house we own. While I am the primary caregiver, he is also very present in our children's lives. Following dinner, as I was on my way home, words were exchanged about his dog's behavior as it kept taking food from my son's hands. I told my brother-in-law to back off, walked into the bathroom, and, just as the door latched, I overheard him talking to everyone about me, mentioning that I had told him to back off regarding his dog. Frustrated, I stepped out of the bathroom and impulsively grabbed a handful of freshly carved turkey, which I threw straight at his face. My husband had to step in to calm us down, and then went to find his mom, who was likely hiding upstairs, possibly in tears. He eventually convinced me to return inside to finish dinner, with the condition that we drive 2 hours away on Monday to get Hawaiian food. I firmly believe that a child who hasn't had a nap can make dinner a challenging experience for everyone. Your mother-in-law knew and understood this, which is why she agreed to change the dinner time. If you go and your son misbehaves, make sure your husband and brother-in-law step up and deal with it. What are your thoughts on today's stories? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, as it greatly supports the channel. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.